We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady. We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
You just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam.
So,
who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo with
me,
Sam Watson.
I'm here. Don't worry about it.
Been here the whole time.
Yeah.
Been here the whole time. We're live.
With the mug.
Yeah. You've been here just waiting for me to throw you up.
I'm just disappointed you went to the solo shot to start the podcast.
You think I'm running the cameras here?
I mean, you had buttons in there. Why wouldn't you have buttons in here?
This isn't the old studio. This is the real studio. Hey, we're here. We're live on YouTube. Appreciate everybody for tuning in early on a Monday morning or afternoon, GMT time, right?
GMT. It's noon. Noon GMT.
Did they change their clocks at a different time, though? Is it only 11 there?
They do. Have they done it yet? I don't think so.
I don't know. It's probably coming up soon.
Look what I got.
You got a helmet so you can hit against me?
Operation Survival.
I'm glad you get the, I'm just glad you get the extended ear flap.
Yeah.
That's good. Protect your cheeks.
Uh-huh.
That's good. Cheekbone protection.
There was some like softball ones that had like a full face cage that felt like a possible.
No, you don't do those.
No, well, you don't, right? But there's a difference between what you do and what you should do. And I'm just saying that here there's quite a large amount of like unprotected face. Now, okay, I'll be side on, but still, like there's quite a large space there for a ball to fly through.
If one's coming to your back, just turn your back, let it hit you in the middle of the back. That's the.
I don't plan on doing a whole lot of
come this way.
Let it hit me.
Oh, so just jump out of the way. Okay.
I mean, jump out of the way, swing at it, whatever. I'm just saying there's a lot of ways that ball could fit through the protective space in that helmet and hit me.
Well, I'm just glad you've got your protection ready.
I also got an elbow pad as well.
Good elbow pad.
Which apparently
you got batting gloves sent to you, right?
Not yet, but there will be. According to the packaging, somehow gets hard when you hit it. Some kind of like, I don't know, magic substance that when it gets struck by something becomes hard as a rock. So that'll be protecting my elbow.
Thanks to Ben Stockwell, avid listener here. He says they'll change the clocks across the pond in 2 weeks. There'll be a 1 week period where we'll be coming to you at about 11 a.m. rather than noon.
GMT.
For these. GMT.
Yeah.
Just a heads up for the GMT folks.
That's great. That's perfect.
Well, I'm glad you're prepared. Don't forget, that was our charity drive. I'll be pitching to Sam, and we'll have some fun trying to track down a catcher.
Yeah, we made our stretch goal. We are now at $4,285.
We are the catcher now, too.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Not, at the same time.
Appreciate everybody. Don't it? That's amazing. It's really cool.
It really is. $4,285 and counting. And that's not even counting people like Ben who are waiting to see like how much damage is inflicted by this just to determine how much money they're going to donate.
So our listeners have been amazing. We appreciate everybody. We appreciate everybody contributing, and then we'll see what I have to do on like the rugby pitch next or whatever that might be. The rugby pitch is what we call it. Really all right, let's get to all the action. We've got week 6 almost in the books. Of course, Josh Allen plays football tonight, so that's always exciting.
Mm-hmm.
I was waking up thinking about that. Get to watch Josh Allen play football tonight.
You were waking up thinking about that.
Not exactly, but
no.
All right, let's get through all the games. There were some bye weeks. Maybe we'll be able to get through this in under 2 hours.
Maybe.
Let's see.
First of all, make sure people send us emails. Emails. What the hell?
Emails at NFL Podcast.
Yes. NFLpodcast@pff.com is our email address. Yeah. Send us emails.
More emails. And I will remind you throughout the day that NFL Pod is the promo code that you're looking for 25% off any of your PFF subscriptions. As we are talking here, the grades will be coming through. Mm-hmm. They'll be coming through live, and you can log in and see them and, follow along with us. NFL Pod, we're giving you 25% off any PFF subscription. NFL Pod is the promo code.
A lot of people have already signed up, which means we've gotten some credit, but obviously, being you and me, we want more credit.
We want a lot of credit. We want as much credit as possible, bringing people into the PFF family because we appreciate you. So NFL Pod, 25% off.
PFF family. Okay.
Yeah. We're family here. It's a family affair. All right, we're going through all the Week 6 action. Thursday night, long time ago, the Bucs beat the Eagles 28-22. On the daily on Friday, we had a little Jalen Hurts discussion about whether or not he's the future in Philadelphia. So you can check out the PFF NFL Daily, the other place where you can hear Sam and I, except every day. Not just 3 times a week. You can hear us every day.
We're also on YouTube there. And
that's starting to catch on YouTube.
And particularly if you go for like the Monday one, which we record Sunday night, you get to see like full casual,
Yeah.
Like late night Sunday when we're...
Is it not up for today yet?
We've been...
What time did you schedule?
No, I think I said it later because we're on live now. So when did you...
You're supposed to do it at 6:30.
I can't do it like 6. Nobody's watching it at 6. So it's coming after this podcast.
Ben would have watched it already.
Well, I'm not catering to GMT people.
All right, so today's daily is going to be out later from a video standpoint, but the audio is already out there.
They form a relatively small percentage of our listenership. Much though we love them, I am instead catering for the people that function in American time, and therefore the daily will be videoed after this podcast. But anyway, you get to see us like looking disheveled and wrecked at the end of a Sunday in whatever getup you typically lounge around on the couch in. So it's...
I don't like it one bit. I dress up nicely for this podcast, and
Oh yeah, you can tell you put the effort in.
Yeah, I throw on a PFF pullover early every Monday morning. That's the plan. All right, can we get through some football here? Let's go. Bucs Eagles 28-22. Anything to add on this game here? Bucs also 5-1, like many other teams in the NFC. I think we're starting to see
most of the NFC is 5-1.
Yeah, the NFC's loaded, man. Rams, Packers, Cowboys, and Bucs are all 5-1. A couple of those teams have played each other, and then the Cardinals are 6-0. I think the story coming out of this weekend is we're starting to see a top-heavy NFC, starting to see some teams really separate themselves. Some expected, some not as expected.
I think the story coming out of this game was largely about Jalen Hurts and the Eagles, who, like, his stats don't look good, right? 12 of 26 for 115 yards, a touchdown, a pick, a 55.8 quarterback rating. But he didn't play that badly, and he makes enough. His overall accuracy is much better than I thought it would be this year. His overall play as a passer is higher than I thought it would be. And he's making enough plays where you're like, there's a potential that he could do something down the line if everything around him kind of resolves itself. And oh, by the way, all the first-round draft picks that you're accumulating, there might not be any good quarterbacks. So the Eagles are going to get presented by this really intriguing problem. And then obviously on the other side, the Bucs are kind of who we thought they are. Like, even when they've been battered by injuries and gone down and lost some receivers, Gronk's still down with the ribs. O.J. Howard steps up, has 6 catches and a touchdown. Like, they're just so deep across the board in terms of receiving weapons that they're so hard to stop because of that.
Weird game for the Bucs too. Their offense was unstoppable for 2 drives, and then they kind of slowed down a little bit, and then
which is like a theme for them. Like not necessarily at that order, but they seem to go cool for periods of games and not just run away the way you think they should.
It was one of the few games too where Brady did not throw the ball down the field much at all. It was very screen heavy. It was like they were saying, hey, the Eagles are going to play a ton of off coverage and soft coverage. We're just going to take all the underneath stuff. But I think the Bucs had a chance to be more aggressive and get the ball down the field a little bit more and not let it be so close because it looked like they were going to run away with it. But either way, the Bucs moved to 5-1. I think they continue to show, as you said, they've got so many playmakers, different ways to win in Tampa Bay, or different ways to run their offense and score a lot of points. Eagles, again, up and down game there, and Hurts Hurts doing just enough to make you a believer, just enough to make you think, really wish there was a good quarterback in the draft, like you're saying. So
yeah,
that's the tough balance, and we got more to see with Jalen Hurts.
He's been better than I thought he would be this year, but he hasn't been good enough that you would be like, oh yeah, we don't need to think about quarterback. We've got our guy. Now let's turn these 3 first-round picks into surrounding him with talent. He's been at this level that's in the middle, the kind of perfect nightmare scenario where you're not 100% sure. Given the picks that they have, I think that would just automatically turn you towards a quarterback in any other terms. But this year, given how all those college quarterbacks are performing, that's a tough place to be.
It's going to be a weird draft. You know, I'm always looking forward to the offseason stuff, man. It's going to be an interesting one because of the quarterback discussion. Not that there's ever a lock at quarterback, but we are coming off of 5 first-round quarterbacks. They're having their ups and downs, but this class looks worse. And a lot of the top players are going to be obviously non-quarterbacks and trying to figure out where that's going to all slot in. It's going to be a fun offseason. Do you want to go in somewhat order here based off of...
I never have any idea what the
Do you want to go
order
big
is.
stories? Do you want to go with the biggest stories? Well, we'll start. We'll go in somewhat order. For the GMT folks, you guys saw the London game. Jacksonville Jaguars and Urban Meyer, 1-0 across the pond.
Mm-hmm.
Still winless here in the continental United States, or just the United States in general.
The lower 48.
Yeah. But, hey, look, the Jags win 23-20. You didn't have anything to say about this game going in. It ended up being pretty fun. Tua comes back. Trevor Lawrence, they go head-to-head. There was a lot of 4th down decisions and 4th down stops. A lot of stuff happened in this game. Stuff happened
in this game. That's true.
Jags get their first win.
Stuff did happen in this game. This is a pretty rough game for Miami. If you're coming out of this and you're like, we just lost to Jacksonville, having been fairly much in control for the first half, that's not a great place to be.
It was a similar story for Miami, too, because they moved the ball pretty easily on their first couple drives, stalled out, and it looked like they needed to come away with touchdowns, right? So they score a touchdown early, a couple field goals after that. But again, this game came down to, Tua has a bad turnover in the third quarter.
Really badly timed as well.
Well, that was when he was playing early in the season. That was the same thing. 4th quarter interception against the Patriots. I mean, Tua, it was one of Tua's better games overall. I thought he did a really nice job spreading the ball around, making those touch throws, because that's what he has. But, yes, the inopportune, poor decisions. And you saw Trevor Lawrence, this is, again, one of his better games. We wanted to call him on the upward trajectory a couple weeks ago. He took a step back last week, but we're getting closer to Trevor Lawrence, at least giving us a glimpse of why he was number 1 overall. Some big-time throws, the touchdown to Marvin Jones, some, just really good stuff.
Yeah.
The ball outside the numbers.
Miami with a pretty depleted secondary, which certainly helped. But, yeah, this is closer to the Lawrence that we thought we were going to see throughout the season. And if this is the trajectory he's on, this is the pathway he starts to take, I think you're going to be encouraged if you're Jacksonville, particularly when his receiving weapons aren't great. I know Marvin Jones had a good game, and Laviska Shenault looks good, but he's still not dealing with an awful lot in terms of guys to throw to. So if that's the kind of path he's taking, I think you have to be pretty encouraged if you're Jacksonville. For Miami and Tua, he's going to end up with a pretty good grade. He was overall fairly efficient, but you really didn't come out of this game tremendously encouraged by what he does. He just makes playing quarterback look really hard at the moment. He's got this Fitzpatrick thing about him where in order to get the ball where it needs to go, even on fairly routine throws, he just has to put his life and soul into the throw to get it there. And he does most of the time. But it just looks hard. It just looks labored and difficult and draining. And it has to be, right? There's got to be something to the idea that if he's having to put that much effort in getting the ball, just on a 12-yard out, how much more draining is it for him versus a Justin Herbert or a Mahomes or somebody who can just flick it out there and not have to worry about it?
You definitely need more space.
His interception was horrendous, as well as being horrendously timed. He had a play earlier in the game where it was 3rd and 2, and he kind of scrambles out of the pocket and has space in front of him, and rather than just pick up the first down, he elects to loft the ball to an open receiver and just misses him by a mile. and they end up converting the 4th down, so it didn't matter. But like those are plays you can't screw up if you don't have that kind of margin for error if you're Tua. Like you're not good enough to be able to pass up a free 1st down when they come along just because you miss a dude on a throw that literally every single quarterback in the NFL should be making.
This was this was one of the Tua games that kind of described my scouting report of him coming out. It's like there was far more good than bad. He distributed. The Dolphins did a good job of attacking the Jaguars underneath coverage. Their linebackers got torched, and Tua was throwing it over the backers and finding open holes in zones. But again, you mentioned the interception. There was always like 1 or 2 bad decisions. Not every Alabama game because it's Alabama, right?
Right.
But when his bad decisions showed up, it's like, man, those are really bad ones. This particular interception that you're talking about, it's like a 5-yard gross underthrow where he's not really seeing the underneath coverage either. Like I think he missed it and just didn't have the arm, far hash. Like it just wasn't right. And then like you said, leaving the 3rd and 2, right, when he overthrew it instead of picking up the 1st down. On the other hand, Lawrence, he avoided the disastrous plays. He got strip sacked. It was very much, he's about to throw. It's very much on Juwan Taylor getting whooped at right tackle. But, man, the touchdown to Marvin Jones, throwing the ball up and away from coverage, that's another one, like the opposite of Tua. It's far hash, and that ball is Herbert-like carry to the far hash, right? I mean, when you can flip the field with that type of arm, you've got a chance to, run an effective offense.
A few other observations I have about this game. One, how did Emmanuel Ogbah randomly get really good?
Juwan Taylor?
No, because it's been this season, generally. And actually, his time with Miami, not even just this season. He's a guy, remember, he was the first pick of the 2nd round, but it was in the year where the Patriots didn't have a 1st rounder. So he was the number 32 overall pick, which in that year was the top pick of the 2nd round. And then, so he didn't get like a 5th-year option with Cleveland. Not that they would have picked it up given how he played for them. Like, didn't really play well at all for the Browns. Was, I think, with Kansas City next and didn't play well for them. Ends up in Miami, and suddenly it's like, oh, this guy's actually quite good. So he's become like a really decent playmaker for them. Had a batted pass in this game, had another big play later on. He's become like a legitimate impact playmaker for their defense. 2, Miami just needs to throw the ball to Mike Gesicki. I don't care what he is. I don't care if he can't block. Like, line him up as a wide receiver. Do whatever it is you need to do and just throw him the damn ball because good things happen when you throw the ball to Mike Gesicki. Like, he's one of your best receivers. Just use him like that. And 3, the Dolphins have a much better plan for Jalen Waddle when Tua is the quarterback. Like, there might not be much difference between Tua and Jacoby Brissett overall as their like net capabilities. And Jacoby comes into this game, throws a nice pass, moves the chains, but there's a difference in how they use Waddle when Tua's there. They are prepared to push him deeper down the field, not just send him on a million shallow drags and whip routes and all that kind of stuff. So for that reason alone, like, there's a lot of plus to Tua being in the game versus Brissett because, like, Waddle is a talented playmaker, and if you're going to maximize the idea that he was a top 10 pick, you need to do more than just all that short underneath stuff with him.
Bottom line, though, is that the Dolphins, the things that we were worried about coming in have been worrisome, which starts with the offensive line. So you're saying you've got a Jalen Waddle, you have a Mike Gesicki, they got production out of Mac Hollins in the past game with Devontae Parker out. Playmaker situation's looking pretty good. Another rough pass blocking outing. Josh Allen, great game for the Jaguars, rushing the passer. That's the pass rusher. But another 41 pass block grade for the Dolphins. Liam Eichenberg struggles in his 2nd start. Remember, he moved to left tackle. They kicked Austin Jackson into guard. Eichenberg struggled mightily. Jesse Davis struggled. It was bad.
Yeah, their line is a catastrophe. And it was probably always going to be a catastrophe, but it's been as bad as it could possibly have worked out for them. And the worst thing about that is they try and protect it, and it still just doesn't matter. Like, that line is abysmal, which is not going to help Tua look good.
And then for the Jaguars to win this game, they're down 3 with minutes left, just 3 or 4 minutes left in the game, kick a game-tying field goal. Dolphins go for it on 4th down.
Can you explain the physics and how that ball went in?
We got to describe what happened.
The kicker has that Greg Zuerlein thing where half a second after the ball leaves his foot, you're like, oh, I missed it, wide right. And then somehow it goes from skewing wide right to like swirling back in again and coming back inside the post. Like there was a Dallas game a while ago where Zuerlein had like 3 kicks and every single one of them looked like he'd missed it when he kicked it, and then they bent back inside the post. The game tying one went like a full yard outside the right upright and then came back in and went through. I don't understand how you kick a ball in a way that does that.
Just plays the draw, man. Plays the draw.
But it's not like a draw is a consistent like low parabola to the left. It curves the whole way. This doesn't do that. It like skews right and then swirls back in. It's like a corkscrew.
The corkscrew. We call it the corkscrew kick. So the Jags tie it up. The Dolphins, they're in a tie game. They go for it on 4th and short, get stuffed. I think it was right before the final field, or was that before the game-tying field goal? Either way, both teams got stuffed on 4th and 1s that ended up, or 4th and 1, 4th and 2, that ended up being key plays. But then the Jags have 3rd and 20. They get a big chunk of it back. They get about 12 yards. They set up a 4th and 8 with 5 seconds left, and the Dolphins, sitting at the first down marker, allow a first down slant, 1 second left. That sets up the game-winning field goal for the Jaguars. And Urban Meyer, undefeated in England. Right? That's one way to
Urban seemed very happy.
Did he fly back with the team, or did he hey, let's go. Jaguars win.
If his Instagram today was like all photos of him like touring Big Ben and getting, shopping in Harrods and stuff, that would be incredible.
What would he do on a what does a day in London look like if Urban's going to stick around?
Well, I would imagine those two things.
Those two things? Okay. Big Ben clock?
Yeah.
Go see the Big Ben clock with Brandon Merriweather.
Yeah, he's probably not busy.
All right. So, good win. Good win for the Jaguars. It finally happened. They're back now. And, look, it ended up being a fun little game. Fun little game. All right, let's go Chargers-Ravens. We thought this was going to be the game of the week. It did not happen.
No.
34-6. Ravens over the Chargers. So, what'd you make of this game? I've got, obviously, some thoughts. We're podcasting about it. But Ravens' run game was pretty effective. I don't think they were dominant offensively, but I was disappointed mostly in the Chargers' offense. And we'll talk about some of the 4th down stuff, too, because that 4th down variance we talked about on the preview show ended up catching up to the Chargers in this one, and I think it makes the game look a little bit uglier.
Yeah, well, it was already going south for the Chargers, but I do want to talk about, in particular, that one 4th down decision that they made that had people losing their minds, which, like, it's just ridiculous. We talked before about how the Chargers had been riding this 4th down run of decisions, and they'd gotten them all. The only 4th down they hadn't converted so far was the special teams fake, where Hunter Renfrow sniffed it out and stuffed it, right? It wasn't like a designed 4th down offense analytics decision. But they'd been going for all these 4th downs. They'd been converting them. At some point, obviously, that was going to come back down to earth, and they were going to fail to convert a couple of them. But the point has never been analytics says go for 4th downs, therefore you will convert them all. The point has always been like it's worth, with the percentage you are going to convert, it's a better way of playing than doing the reverse, kicking it. So down 18 points, they went for 4th and 1 on their own 19-yard line with like 6 minutes to go in the third quarter. And people were mad because they didn't get it, right? And obviously when you don't get it in your own 19-yard line, you're setting the opposition up for immediate points. So like Mike Greenberg was railing against this yesterday.
Greeny?
Yeah. I can't find his tweet, but he's like, I'm a big fan of analytics, but here we go. I'm all for aggressive coaching and analytics, but going for it on your own 19 in the third quarter is insane. #Chargers. Like, they did it a week ago. It's not like this is the first time this has ever come up. Oh, this is craziness. They literally did this last week against the Browns and largely won the game because they did it. It was
catalyst for the win.
It was like 4th and 1 from their own 22 or something last week, and they got it, and they win that game, so nobody says a damn thing. But this time, they failed to get it. Like, you were already down 18 points. What did you expect them to do? Going for it, the analytics in this case actually says definitely go for that one. I don't have no problem with going for it. I do have a problem with the play they called to go for it.
This is, just to highlight too, earlier in the game, 4th and 3 on their own 39, they go for it. About 9 minutes left in the second quarter. So even on your own 39, on 4th and 3, not 4th and 1, but 4th and 3, they went for it and failed. So What were you saying? They were 7 of 8 converting earlier. And look, the failure was a punter. Somebody corrected us that was like, no, they're perfect. But
I went to look up. I meant to look up 4th and 1 numbers, but for the last 4 years, 3rd and 4th and 1. So 3rd down, 4th down, and 1 yard to go. The entire league is 68.4% in terms of conversion rate, right?
Yeah.
So you have a really high rate of converting 4th and 1. So you have to bear that in mind when you're like, do you go for it in your own territory? Like, you're most of the time you're converting this play. Now, obviously, it is an absolute gotta-have-it situation, so you should have a really good play. The play they had for this one, I don't think was. Like, they had this weird kind of option, hitch or go type of conversion. But, like, no, you've got to have something set up, designed to get a guy half a yard open so you can convert 1 yard.
They did the same. Well, they did the same thing on 4th and 3. It was an outside lane little hitch where Herbert was incomplete to Mike Williams, Marlon Humphrey in tight coverage on that play, and then they circled back on this 4th and 1. That was in the 3rd quarter, right? So 3rd quarter, about 5:58 left, and they're down 24-6. Like you said, 18-point differential here.
Yeah.
The point in this whole thing. Now, both of these failed 4th downs, by the way, led to field goals by the Ravens, right? So the Ravens come away with 6 points on the Chargers' failure, right? So, and again, that's kind of baked into this, right? You know, if you don't get this, either one of these 4th downs, whether it's at the 19 or the 39, if you don't get them, you're almost certainly giving up 3. And of course, there's a good chance you're giving up 7. But the whole point is to maximize win probability, not better margin of error, not margin of defeat, essentially. So the Chargers were at the point where it's like, look, our only chance of winning, based off the numbers, is to hold on the ball and score points.
Yeah, you're on 20.
Whether you lose 34-6 or whether you lose 34-31 doesn't matter. You're trying to maximize your win probability. Now, when you don't get it, there is the other side. When you don't get it, your win probability drops dramatically as well. So there is risk there.
But you're expected to get it 70% of the time. Like, down 18 points on your own 20, if you don't get it, you're probably punting the ball, 40-something yards. They're taking it back 10. You're setting them up for a drive that starts at midfield. So they're probably scoring 3 anyway.
So they're probably getting 3 anyway. So that's the point, right? So when you say, well, you got to punt and trust your defense and this and that, there is this element of trusting your defense. When you go for it in your own territory, you're saying, okay, defense, now we got to crack down in a tighter space in the red zone where things are a little bit more volatile and just give up the field goal, which again, in today's NFL, if you give the other team the ball at, say, their own 40, they're 20, 30 yards away from field goal range, you're probably giving up a field goal attempt then anyway. That's all baked in. Now, again, the thing we come back to on Thursday, we said all of these decisions earlier in the year are not only the right ones analytically, but they look better when you make it. When you make it, it's like, oh, they're maximizing their win probability. At some point, that was going to run out. Just like the 2019 Ravens, their 4th down success ran out in the playoffs. The Chargers, it just happened to be here in Week 6. And it feels like, well, the Ravens just dominated this game. I don't know that that's always the reality. Obviously, it was a beatdown. I mean, the Ravens run game was fantastic. Chargers didn't really have many answers there, but it just, the variance, man, caught up to them for this particular week.
But that's the thing. Like, they were already in a hole by the time this was a factor. Like, just if you are railing against this decision as madness because it was in their own in your own 19-yard line, you're just you're an idiot. I mean, come on. They went for it a week ago. They got it. It was the right call then. It was the right call now. You can't just say, well, they didn't get it, therefore it's stupid. Like, that's just dumb. You can't be that simple. And I mean simple in the, not very, you have to be more sophisticated than that in your mode of thinking. This is the right call because most of the time it works out your way. It doesn't mean it always works out your way, and analytics would never claim that. But it is the right percentage play to make. It's like a poker game, right? It is the best hand. It doesn't mean it will always hold up when the turn and the river cards come out.
I mean, you're responding to Mike Greenberg here, whose job is to have strong takes on stuff.
I mean, it wasn't him alone. There was a lot of people claiming that was madness because, apparently we're that unsophisticated in how we think that just the way the play works out determines whether you were right or wrong.
Yeah, I mean, look, the other side of it is when it doesn't work out, then your win probability is worse than punting. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it does, but it's just not as significant as the payoff if you convert.
Right.
That's the bottom line on this whole thing. The other part of this is, again, the Ravens' run game was really good. It was just Ravens-like. It's not that. I mean, they ran for 187 when you include Lamar and everything that he's doing, but Devontae Freeman had a good game. Latavius Murray with a better game than he had, statistically at least, with a long touchdown. Wide receiver looking. Le'Veon Bell looks like a receiver to me. It's because
he's wearing number 17. Like, that's just inevitable.
It's just wrong.
A guy wearing number 17 is going to look like a wide receiver.
Looks ridiculous. Even Le'Veon Bell found the end zone here. But the Chargers, as much as we've talked about, hey, they invite the run, they do this and that. I mean, they did not do a bad job against the Ravens' pass game, which had been incredibly efficient these last few weeks. But, they got run over just a little bit.
Yeah, which was one of the concerns coming into this game, right?
Yeah.
That, this is a defense that wants to invite the run, and against the Browns, that coughed up 7 yards per attempt. Against the Ravens, it wasn't quite that catastrophic, but it was still 5.3 yards per attempt and 3 touchdowns, 35 attempts. Like, at some point, you're getting run over too much, and, you can't really do that.
Herbert did not have a great game. Lamar didn't throw the ball that well either, to be honest, but one of the worst interceptions of the year, throws it right to Kazir White, the linebacker, but Herbert missed far more throws than he had previously. A couple turnover-worthy plays in there. This would have been one of those games. They only ran the ball 10 times with their backs for 14 yards. This would have been one of those games where the Ravens are just making life difficult as far as the pass game goes. They did a really nice job. Couple schemed up some pressure and the whole thing. Like, Ravens-like game defensively. Would have been a nice game to be able to have the run game as an answer, and you just didn't have that.
Yeah, and the Ravens blitz really caused Justin Herbert all kinds of problems. He had a PFF grade of 62.7 against the blitz, which isn't that bad, but
we're talking about a quarterback that's grading about 85 coming in, though.
Yeah, and his pressure was an issue. They blitzed him a ton. Like, they just confused Justin Herbert in a way that most teams haven't, and you saw every now and again he would put the ball in harm's way because of it. It knocked him off his game in a way it didn't to Mahomes, which is going to happen. Like, Justin Herbert is still learning, he's still developing, but this was an indication of how against normal quarterbacks, like even guys as good as Herbert, like, this defense is confusing, it's problematic, it causes all kinds of hesitation, and you just get knocked off your stride by a split second or a margin in terms of accuracy, and most quarterbacks are of that inclination. For some reason, Patrick Mahomes, it just doesn't affect him.
We were real close to writing the Ravens eulogy, man.
Yeah, I mean, they were in trouble. And look, they're, as much as they've righted the ship and they look in a really strong position right now, their schedule does get brutal down the stretch. So it's not that like it's smooth sailing from here to the Super Bowl. They still have a lot of work to do, but this was a really kind of important stretch for them to get back up and shake off the wobble that they had earlier in the season. And they do look, I mean, they rescued their season.
They did. So they're 0-1 against the Raiders. They win against the Chiefs in that crazy Sunday night game. They have not lost since. They've won 5 in a row. The Ravens moved to 5-1, and the strong AFC North coming down a peg with the Browns losing. The Bengals are now in second place in the AFC North. We'll talk more about them as we go. I do have breaking news here, though, on the PFF NFL podcast. For PFF Elite subscribers, you get 5 games you can go check out with Premium Stats 2.0. Chargers, Ravens being one of them. Vikings, Panthers, Packers, and Bears. Bengals, Lions, and then the good old Texans, Colts game. It's all available. And if you don't have PFF Elite, you can get it with NFL Pod promo code, 25% off NFL Pod.
The good old Texans, Colts game.
The good old. We can't wait. Can't wait till we break that one down. We'll go play by play in that one. Before we get into the next one, though, another reminder: DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, has got you covered for a big win this week. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game. And if they do, you win $200 in free bets. That's right, $200 in free bets over at DraftKings.com. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. It's that simple. If Sportsbook isn't available yet in your state, DraftKings won't leave you empty-handed. Everyone can play for huge cash prizes all season long with DraftKings Daily's fantasy sports contests. And DraftKings is giving all new customers a free shot at millions of dollars in total prizes with their first deposit. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code PFF. Bet just $5 on any NFL team to win their game. All they have to do is win. Maybe pick your favorite, whatever it is. But then you win $200 in free bets. If they win, you win with the promo code PFF. This week at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey, Indiana, and Pennsylvania only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit and $1 wager required. One per customer. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, last week we were giving away $100 in free bets. Now it's $200 in free bets. So just pick a favorite or pick the team that's going to win. I'm not going to tell you what to do. But DraftKings Sportsbook promo code is PFF. All right, where are we going to go here? Game report. Let's check it out. Let's do the Texans-Colts. Colts win 31-3, pretty handily. Carson Wentz chucking it down the field. T.Y. Hilton comes back. Not Ty.
No.
T.Y. Hilton back for the Colts. And Carson Wentz has his best game as a Colt.
Yeah, and look, there's a danger of connecting those two things together, going 2 + 2 and coming up with the answer, but there's a real potential that T.Y. Hilton, if he is, healthy, if he's capable of doing some of the things he did in the past, makes a real material difference to this offense and to Carson Wentz in particular, who throughout his career has never really had that, consistent guy who can win with speed on the outside and be that big play threat. Even when he had a pretty good receiving core with the Eagles, they were guys that weren't really winning in that style. So all of a sudden, if you get Michael Pittman Jr., T.Y. Hilton as the speed guy that can make some plays on the outside, Mo Ali Cox, if you just feed him the ball more, is clearly a playmaking tight end, and the running backs that they have capable of doing things out of the backfield, suddenly that's a pretty nifty-looking group of playmakers. And, Wentz, I think, is starting to show that if you surround him with that much talent, he's still capable of those really good games. Now, obvious caveat against the Texans, but still, I would say that's pretty encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, he had the 4 big-time throws. He was airing it out down the field, and I like where your head is at. I don't think it's not the most imposing group of playmakers, but the sum of their parts can be decent. T.Y. did have a really good game. He was one of the recipients of those bombs. Mo Ali Cox finds the end zone again, though he did drop one in the end zone. That was one of Wentz's better throws. But then you combine that with the offensive line coming back. And I think we're going to look back at the Colts Monday night game against the Ravens, because they're 2-4 now, and say, man, 3-3 would be not only far more attractive, but you'd feel a little bit you'd feel like the Colts are getting back on track. Wentz needed to find his legs for a couple weeks. And that you trust that the offensive line's not going to be bottom 5 in the league as they've been so far this year. That these pieces are going to get better. And it was a couple years ago. Remember the Colts started 1-5, and I know Andrew Luck was the quarterback at the time, but they started 1-5. They got back into the playoff race and the whole thing. Colts could have been potentially made a run here. The other thing is we could be completely overrating the Colts here, coming off of a win against the Texans. I don't know, but you can at least be encouraged by what this offense did. The explosive nature of it. They showed what they're capable of with Wentz, with the running backs, and the whole deal.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, look, it's like those first few games for Carolina, for Denver. There is a limit to how much you can take from a game like this, where the Colts should have beaten the Texans. They did beat the Texans. They look good doing it, but how much do you give them credit for style points? But I do think there's a real potential with, in particular, T.Y. Hilton in that offense. That gives Carson Wentz something that he hasn't had for most of his career. What do you think about Davis Mills after this game? Because I'm tired of the Davis Mills train. I don't want to do this every week.
The same thing I said before. I mean, it's going to be Kyle Allen-like. A couple turnover-worthy plays. The Colts' zone defense has generally been very soft this year.
Because he was better than his stats this week.
Yeah, but he started out not missing too many throws. It looked like there was a point where if you combined what Lamar did on Monday night and what Davis Mills did through the first quarter and a half or whatever it was, they were both completing like 85% of their passes, and it was just ridiculous. And then I think Mills came back down to earth a little bit with a couple turnover-worthy plays. I mean, he's all right. I mean, he's what people thought he was. And on top of that, just like I think we'll talk about the Lions a little bit. Jared Goff, can you learn anything about Jared Goff this year? I thought we might learn a little bit. If we would have learned something about Goff, if he, dragged this Lions team to an effective offense.
Which was never going to be possible. Which
was always going to be a massive challenge. Can you learn anything about Davis Mills? He's thrown to Brandon Cooks and what else, right? This isn't it's not a good Texans team.
I mean, Tyrod had it looking pretty good.
Oh. Yeah, early. He's sitting on that grade.
Do you put Tyrod back in?
Maybe, because I don't think I want to watch this every week.
Now you're where I've been for the whole way.
Yeah, I'm to where you are.
Yeah. I don't want to watch Davis Mills every week either. On the other hand, I don't really see a benefit of putting Tyrod back in at this point.
No, you just hope with enough experience, Davis.
You're almost certainly better with Tyrod as the quarterback, but what does that get you at this stage? What is the benefit of being slightly better in games against people that you're going to lose?
I'm also less likely to care about the top 3 pick in the draft this year, so I don't really know. I mean, it's always better to have higher draft picks. Then you've got more draft capital.
But if anything,
trade down and the whole thing. But
it's less important because there might not be a quarterback you want. But on the other hand, that means everybody's shooting for the non-quarterbacks.
No, I get it. I mean,
the guys like Myles Garrett, Thibodeau is going to go number 1 instead of number 4.
Yeah, I get it. I would rather have a good draft pick. Yeah, Davis Mills is probably going to be the guy to start. But it's just again, if you got the stats in front of you, if you got the grades in front of you, go check out Kyle Allen. There'll be some good games. You'll say, hey, Davis Mills figured it out. And there'll be some bad games where it's like, oh, he's Davis Mills again. This one landed somewhere in between.
Okay.
He was just okay. So the Davis Mills experience hasn't changed in my life. Just like I haven't changed my Daniel Jones takes through the years.
No, at all, regardless of the evidence presented to you.
Yeah, because the evidence is Folesian.
The evidence
is
Folesian.
It's Folesian. Let's go to that game. Rams 1,000,000, 38-11 over the Giants. Giants were keeping it close early on, Sam.
Yeah.
But Daniel Jones, now he was in concussion protocol all week. So the narrative that he has, we can only describe what we've seen. And what we had seen early in the season was Daniel Jones playing really good football, throwing the ball at a high level, cutting down on some of the poor decisions that marred his game for the first 2 years in the league. And so the two ways to look at this are he just had a bad game on his way to, developing and getting better, or the regression hit him hard. And, again, he's always been who he is, and it just happened all hit in one game instead of spread out over 5 games. Or the concussion protocol was the thing, or whatever it was. But it was a bad game for Daniel Jones. We started to see, the obliviousness in the pocket, the turnover-worthy play. He's just hitting Taylor Rapp with the ball, not seeing him. So as great as Daniel Jones was through the first 5 weeks of the season, he was the other side of that in this game.
Yeah, I have no interest in blaming the concussion. I don't think that was an issue. I have no idea, but I would assume that if he was cleared to play, he was cleared to play, and he's fine. It's the Rams defense, so there's always an inclination of if a guy's borderline, how much do you want to throw him out there against Aaron Donald and what they can bring? But whatever, they put him out there. This game was kind of summed up though with literally the first play of the game. First play of the game, Jones drops back, and it's a strip sack. And the Rams had 3 different guys bearing down on him. The guy was trapped in the pocket, had nowhere to go. His right tackle, Nate Solder, gets whooped by Leonard Floyd. And it's a fumble, and it's just a disaster, and the Giants are in a hole. Yeah. Then, their defense, which had been feisty last year, is just bad at the moment.
No, I've thrown the feisty label elsewhere. They don't get it this year.
They weren't bothering to cover Cooper Kupp, which in this offense this year seems like a flaw. If you're going to put Peppers one-on-one against Cooper Kupp all game long, you deserve to get whooped by 30-plus points. And that's what was happening. And then, when things got in an ugly hole, and also, by the way, losing Kadarius Toney, I think, was a pretty big loss to this offense. He is just special with the ball in his hands. And even in this game, he played a couple of snaps and caught quick pass, cuts to the inside, makes a guy miss, like hobbles his way up the sideline, and then immediately like off the field. And it's like, no, I can't. Like, I literally can't run on this ankle, so I'm done.
That's with all the other receivers hurt. Darius Slayton hurt, Kenny Golladay hurt. So look, I mean, there's that element too. I mean, if we have to lay that. Saquon Barkley wasn't there. There was a lot of pressure on Daniel Jones.
Right. So all of a sudden he's in a hole. His offensive line, which had been trending up and getting better, just fell apart. Couldn't block the Rams. Nate Solder lost one. Andrew Thomas, who's been playing really well, like got beat for a really bad strip sack again by Okoronkwo. So they're just, you can't do that. Like, you can't give a team like the Rams those kind of free extra possessions, particularly not in favorable field situations. And then at that point, Jones is deep in a hole trying to dig it all out by himself. And yeah, when he tried to do that, he made a couple of really bad throws to Taylor Rapp both times.
Yes.
But, I mean, I don't know how much. He's going to end up with probably the worst quarterback grade of the week. But I don't know how much of that was his fault versus the circumstances around him.
This was the risk of it's not just the offensive line, because if you look at the pass block rates for the Giants, I mean, there is some, look, as a unit, as a team, it's a 32, which is horrendous. I mean, it's tough to run an offense. This is worse than what the Dolphins were earlier. Their team pass block rate's about 32 for yesterday. That includes backs and tight ends and the whole thing. Those guys had some rough blocks in there as well. But it is tough to run effective offense. So while the Giants had mitigated disaster for a big chunk of the season, and Jones had played well, thrown to those various playmakers that we keep citing, it all came crashing down in this one.
Yeah, and it's not even that, like, when they were giving up sacks, but when they gave up sacks, those first two were strip sacks.
Right.
And they were strip sacks deep in the Giants' territory, at which point the Rams are getting points from them, and now you're dead. Like,
those are the plays. I mean, look, we always talk about this, though. Some strip sacks are avoidable. Some are like a little bit of bad luck. Other ones, you got to have a little bit of feel. Those are also the plays where Jones had been avoiding as well. And they crept up a little bit. They're tough. I mean, there were quick losses. Defenders on him quickly, but Jones also he's got to take better care of the ball overall.
Yeah, I mean,
he did in this one at least.
The first one, he could have avoided this. He could have avoided the strip sack. He could have avoided the fumble, but he was screwed on that.
Yeah,
play. There were three different guys bearing down on him, and none of them were Aaron Donald, ironically. And he didn't tuck the ball away and just eat it in the way you probably should have, particularly on the first play of the game. But like, again, I don't know how much you say this is just all on Jones being bad.
No, I mean, look, I think the Rams defense, too, which we had talked about a lot coming into the season, as, they're going to keep it up. How good are they going to be? They deserve a ton of credit because Okoronkwo, who you mentioned, Taylor Rapp, who had the 2 picks, Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, all those guys graded 88+. I mean, there was really good performance overall by the Rams. Run defense, pass rush, coverage, one of the more complete defensive performances. So it goes both ways. One of the more complete defensive performances by any team this season. So what happened there was the Giants were up 3-0 for a little while, and then, like you said, they just stopped covering Cooper Kupp, and the Rams defense took over the game and started making those big plays that you either blame Jones, you give credit to the Rams defense. But look, the Rams come away with a 38-11 win. They move to 5-1, and they're back to this discussion, right? Who are the best teams in the NFC? They're right back in there and showing they really put a complete game together here.
You see, the Rams also had basically, I'm pretty sure it was an uncalled fake punt. It got negated by a penalty, but they lined up and nobody was covering one of the gunners, and they have Johnny Hecker, who's got like one of the best passer ratings of all time. So the guy's like waving, hey, nobody's covering me here, and Johnny just catches the ball, flicks it out, first down, negated. But that's kind of cool, that the idea that the punter just has free reign. If nobody's covering the gunner, just flick it out there. Take the first down.
I think most teams have that, right?
Yeah, but how many would actually trust their punter to do that versus Johnny Hecker, where you're fairly confident he can throw a ball 20 yards?
That's true. Hecker's got a good track record. Matthew Stafford and the stats look great. A couple turnover-worthy plays in there, though. He's having another season where I think he lands right where maybe we predicted.
This is going to be painful.
What?
Just the people doing the victory laps over the Matthew Stafford thing. It's like, he's not playing that well.
He's playing fine. I mean,
he's playing fine, but people are like crowning him MVP and stuff.
I think he's playing better than Jared Goff in this system at the increment that we expected.
Yeah.
And that has led to incredible, again, Cooper Kupp in his production this year, just ridiculous. The open throws that the Rams are creating every single week, just ridiculous. I mean, it's the analytics community. It loves their EPA, and I'm going to reiterate here: EPA, expected points added. It is a team-driven stat. It's a team-driven stat. It's especially in small sample sizes. Now, over time, I think if you're trying to evaluate quarterbacks, even the bad stats pretty much get you in the ballpark. I don't think passer rating is a good stat, but over time it gets you in the ballpark. Wins and losses, not a good stat in a small sample size. Over time it gets you there, though. So I think so EPA is the same, QBR probably the same. I know PFF grade gets you there, but if you're just using EPA, you always put it right next to QB grade. And the Rams have the most efficient pass game in the league, and Stafford's going to be ranked 15th or whatever he is. And you say, okay, this is system-driven production so far this season.
Here is an over/under for you. In 2018, the Rams, that was their Super Bowl year, right?
Yes.
The Rams go to the Super Bowl. Jared Goff has his career year, and not a single human being on the face of the earth was mentioning the term MVP in any connection with Jared Goff. Will Matthew Stafford this year, like the Rams have a reasonable shot of going back to the Super Bowl this year. They look like an absolute contender in the NFC. So whether or not they get there or not, will Matthew Stafford, let's say they do. Let's say the Rams get to the Super Bowl this year. Will Matthew Stafford's PFF grade be higher or lower than 2018 Jared Goff?
Did you include the playoffs? Because I think he was like an 84 in the regular season. And
he was an 85.5 in the regular season. And then in the playoffs, he drops like to an 84.3.
84.
I think it'll be a little higher. The whole thing, 84.3 overall, will he be higher or lower?
I think it'll be a little higher
than Jared Goff.
I predicted Stafford, his career highs.
Because if he goes to the playoffs, like if they're the number one seed entering the playoffs, which is when the voting happens, he's got a pretty good shot of winning MVP.
Well, okay, yeah, because his stats are ridiculous.
And he might not have any better a grade than Jared Goff did that year.
He had a couple nice throws yesterday. It's fine. I mean, his stats are, outpacing his actual play. I do think he'll outgrade Goff in the end. I think he'll be around an 84,
because he isn't
85.
right now, by the way.
Yeah, I know, but I think if you play at this level, the accumulation of he's playing at a solid level. Remember, you can't compare 6 games to 18 or 19. You just can't. It's not. It's two different things, right? The pace that Stafford is at in a high 70s grade over time, if you keep playing high 70s ball for a season, it's an 84, 85. He's pretty much on pace to play
after
at
6
Goff
weeks.
Or better.
Goff was a 90.7 that year.
That's not a pace, though. That's a
right. But
sample.
After 6 weeks, he was a 90 grade.
Yeah, that's fine. Oh, people don't remember 2018. People don't remember that, and I mean, unless they're pulling out videos on us talking about Dak in 2018.
In fact, Goff's numbers slaughtered Stafford through 6 games.
Great.
That year, he was 9.9 yards per attempt through 6 games. A PFF grade of 90. Goff was incredible, and yet not MVP, not in the discussion.
Well, don't forget he was sharing MVP votes with Todd Gurley that season.
And Sean Payton. Or not Sean Payton.
Sean McVay. No, Gurley was the one getting all the MVP hype. He was the catalyst for that Rams offense. There is also a little bit of truth in that, because that Rams offense was far more run game driven. They're not play action driven as much. They are putting more on Stafford's plate. It is a pass first offense.
He allows him to do more, but we need to start looking at what's actually happening here and how much Stafford is doing versus how much the scheme is presenting him with now that he has the capability to hit various parts of the field. Like Jared Goff right now versus Matthew Stafford right now, it's clearly not that close. Stafford is a significantly better quarterback, and that allows this offense to be significantly more potent. But Stafford now versus Jared Goff in 2018, when things hadn't fallen to pieces around him, I think is a lot closer. And if that's true, you probably need to dial back talk of MVP for Stafford. And tier 1 quarterbacks and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to just enjoy watching Stafford and what he's doing and all that stuff. But you have to balance it away, balance it around the people going nuts. I think he's number one in ESPN's QBR too. So they're big believers, Matthew Stafford. So they would be pushing Stafford for MVP. Would be my feeling. I think the Rams offense as a whole, they've been spectacular. So that's been the key here. All right, let's go to this Minnesota-Carolina game. Minnesota 34, Panthers 28. They win in overtime. Another crazy finish for the Vikings. They're in Seahawks territory for the level of crazy in their various games. The Panthers, what were they down at this point? Because they tie it up. They were down 8 on that final drive, but they were down at one point 28-17 in the fourth quarter. Sam Darnold playing a terrible game all of a sudden comes to life, man, on that fourth quarter drive. So Sam Darnold leads the Panthers back to a 28-28 tie at the end of regulation. And then Kirk Cousins, what a throw to win the game. Walk off to KJ Osborne for 27-yard touchdown. A lot happening in this game.
Darnold with a terrible game that was looking even worse because he had 8 drops from his receivers, which is the second most of any quarterback in a game this year. And so it's like Roethlisberger had 10 in a game once, and then Darnold with 8, and then nobody else had more than 5. Like, this was a catastrophic game in terms of the Panthers' passing game right up until the death to get it back. Like, the Vikings are a team where they're going to play every single team in the NFL to a one-score game, regardless of how good that team is. Like, they'll play the Bucs to a one-score game, and they'll play the Texans to a one-score game. Like, that's the level they're at right now in this weird world of just trapped in the middle of the league. The one thing, though, that is interesting about this game is, has Kirk Cousins become clutch? Like, the knock on Cousins for a long time was, when everything's going fine and in an ordinary game script, he looks incredible. And his PFF grade is higher than you would have expected it to be when they signed him from Washington. And in those kind of terms, he looks great. But then when you ratchet up the difficulty level, when you put him in third downs or you put him in a hole and all these kinds of things, he gets incrementally worse. And you can see it statistically. You can visualize it in terms of graphs and all these kinds of things. The harder you make his job, the worse he plays. And that isn't true for all quarterbacks. Like, it sounds like an obvious thing, but some quarterbacks change the way they play the game to respond to those circumstances and don't play dramatically worse. Cousins does. On the other hand, recently that hasn't been the case. Like, he's been showing up in key.
He went the opposite here because he definitely missed a couple touchdowns early. He missed throws early on.
Yeah.
But he also put the Vikings. Did they miss the field goal at the end of regulation? So he put them into field goal range with not a lot of time left at the end of regulation.
Again, for the second time.
Again, he keeps doing that. And then has the walk-off. Here's what I liked about the walk-off to KJ Osborne. He had an open receiver underneath. It was second and long. They're in field goal range. Of course, a touchdown wins it. A field goal, you have to kick it off and play some defense. He had an open receiver underneath, and that's what we're talking. And this is why, when I look at QB wins and all these other stats, right, and I say, yeah, there are other influences and all that, but even advanced stats, like the quarterback's one of the few positions in sports where you really dictate your situation, right? You dictate what you do, where you throw, how aggressive you are, how conservative you are, which chances you take, when you take them. You don't really do that in baseball. You can't put runners on base to knock them in. In football, you can't decide when you get to play man or play zone if you're a corner. As a receiver, you don't get to decide when you're targeted or when their quarterback sees you. The quarterback dictates the situations, and those are the discussions we used against Cousins, right? He was the guy, they'd be down 2 scores, and he would just check it down, and he'd get his 300 passing yards and his pristine passer rating, and they'd still lose. And that has flipped a little bit, I think, in the last year and a half, where in this situation, he hits the game winner instead of the check down to get them into third and short. And I was impressed by that. I think we should be impressed by that and what he's been able to do in 2-minute drill situations and all these situations where he seemingly failed previously earlier in his career. And again, the data very much did back that up.
Yeah. And this is now back-to-back weeks, right, where he's been put in a hole and given not an awful lot of time to work with, and at least giving them a shot to do what they needed to. Last time it was to kick the field goal to win the game. This time it was a field goal attempt, which they ultimately missed. They could have been more aggressive on that drive. There are teams where it's like, the line they put up, where it's like, this is field goal range. It's like teams play for that line. And then once you get there, like, we're good, we're done. Yeah. The Vikings felt a little bit like that, where it was like, oh, this is the line we need to get to take a 55-yard shot or whatever it was. It's like, have you not learned of your not even recent, your experience as the Minnesota Vikings franchise when it comes to place kicking? It's not great. If you can make that guy's life easier.
The line's the 2.
Yeah, I would try and do that. Now, you can look at that on the flip side and say, you're the Vikings. It doesn't matter where you're kicking the ball from. There's a pretty good chance of it missing. It's a 27-yard field goal versus a 57. It's the same. You're going to miss it anyway. But I would be trying to get that guy some more yardage when you had the opportunity to. They didn't. But ultimately, Cousins did what was being asked of him, and then in overtime did it again. It is starting to get to be an interesting conversation for the Vikings. You kind of think of them as this franchise trapped in quarterback purgatory, and they keep re-upping Cousins, and is that really the thing to do? But Cousins kind of keeps incrementally getting better. It's not necessarily pretty, and there always does seem to be something missing, and he might not be the most likable human in the world versus some of these other quarterbacks that seem to have a little bit more self-awareness and those kinds of things. But it's tough to look at what the Vikings have done with him and say that he hasn't every single time justified the call they've made. It's everything else that's gone south. And that's part of the discussion is can you maintain a good enough roster around Kirk Cousins given the resources that he individually takes up in terms of salary cap and stuff? That definitely has to be part of the equation. But Cousins is actually holding up his end of the bargain.
I also think when you have Cousins and we have any quarterback, Adam Thielen had a great game, Justin Jefferson, KJ Osborne has developed into a really good, solid number 3, even though the name recognition isn't necessarily there. He's played, pretty solid football. And then you have Dalvin Cook, where at any given time, he's just going to use his speed and create big plays and the whole deal. That's another piece of it, right? That's been huge for the Vikings, replacing Stephon Diggs with Justin Jefferson and keeping the wide receiver room strong. But again, there is a little something different. Even Cousins, he breaks out of a sack and picks up 13, 16 yards, whatever it was, on to convert a first down. They're starting to add up, man. Cousins is starting to come through in these situations where he used to kind of laugh and think that this game's over. So I think he deserves credit. I think he absolutely deserves credit for that. Certainly wasn't a perfect. He still threw the ball backwards out of bounds one time. Backwards out of bounds.
Well, look,
he got hit but it was just avoid those.
We can't be perfect.
Can't be perfect.
Potential huge development for the Vikings. Christian Darrisaw got his first start, played 89 snaps, and allowed 1 pressure.
That's solid.
He looks good. I mean, just visibly, you can see the athleticism that he has, the ability to change directions, to mirror moves from defensive linemen. I remember this is going up against the Panthers. They have Brian Burns and Hassan Reddick, who have been one of the best dynamic pass rushing duos in the NFL through the first 5 weeks of the season. And not just that, but are particularly awkward athletes to have to block. Whatever about how good they are a pain in the ass if you're a big, slow offensive lineman to have to deal with guys that are small, quick, fast, can punish you if you make a slight mistake or if you just sort of lumber into position. They are players that you would imagine would have given Rashad Hill all kinds of trouble, and Darrisaw shows up, has 1 pressure, looks pretty good in the game. Obviously he's their first-round pick. This is basically his first action, a few snaps last week, but that has the potential to be a massive upgrade for them, randomly a third of the way through the season. Yeah,
he did a nice job. Brian O'Neill is the one. Over time, Brian O'Neill was fine. He had the 2 worst blocks probably among him and Darrisaw, those 2 tackles, but generally solid. Now, if they're both good at tackle, that is a huge step forward for the Vikings. Panthers land at 3-3 now. So they're back down to earth. Like I said on the preview show, this is huge. I mean, the Vikings move up to 3-3, the Panthers down to 3-3. Two teams trending in opposite directions, and maybe, those early season Vikings are bad, the Panthers are good. Those vibes change here by week 6. Ultimately, Darnold, his third straight. I know they had all the drops, but grade was poor. Even with some of those great throws that he made down the stretch. The seam ball, man, that was the one he made at Penn State in the Rose Bowl. That was one of the throws that made me a believer. He does that on 4th and long in this one. It was like, old Darnold is back, but just wasn't enough.
Bill O'Brien Palazzolo over there. Here were the 10 plays that made me a Darnold believer.
Yeah, that was one of them. The Rose Bowl was one of the games that made me a Darnold believer. All right, let's go to the Chiefs and football team. Chiefs 31, football team 13. The football team was winning at the half and, early into the third quarter, but the Chiefs outscored them 21-0 in the second half. Better team just pulls away, but it was not without a little bit of drama for a game that should have been easy for the juggernaut of the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs just continue to shoot themselves in the foot over and over again. It was like, I tweeted yesterday, they were like, Sideshow Bob with the rakes. Just like step, bang, like kept cracking themselves in the face. And I've been doing this all season long. And the good news out of this game for the Chiefs, I think, is that their defense looked different against Washington than it has against every other team so far this year. And, their defense statistically had basically been the worst in the NFL this year. But the one kind of caveat to that was, but they face some really good offenses, and the Eagles. So you can at least say it's probably not as bad as it looks. Now, the question is, how bad is it? And this was an important game to determine that. Washington's offense is nowhere near as good as the other offenses they face. So if it still looks catastrophic, now we have some real problems to deal with. But if it looks better against Washington, okay, we can at least discuss the possibility that it will be good enough that the offense, if it stops shooting itself in the foot, can do what it's always done and get wins anyway. I think that's what we saw, that the Chiefs' defense is not going to be good. It's going to be a problem, but it's at least not like the worst defense in the NFL and will consistently mean that they cannot make mistakes on offense. If it plays to this kind of level against a lot of offenses, it gives the Chiefs' offense still a significant margin for error, which apparently they need this year.
Yeah, they had the one coverage bust, 39-yard touchdown to Ricky Seals-Jones. Other than that, overall, Taylor Heineke only averaged 4.7 yards per attempt against this Chiefs defense. Now, of course, we always talk about offense dictates defense. How much of this it was Terry McLaurin and friends that they're trying to cover. Even McLaurin was held to just 28 yards. When you don't have you especially, were more optimistic about Washington this year because we thought it would be Fitzpatrick under center, throwing to McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, De'Ami Brown, as a rookie, adding take the top off the defense type of element. Logan Thomas, we've got a bunch of those dudes injured, and Adam Humphries is like not a big part of the offense. So I don't know how much you take away on the Chiefs defense, other than at least they didn't get torched against Washington, right?
Yeah.
Now. They did show pretty well.
I think that yes, it's still a problem when you face better offenses again, which you're probably going to do in the playoffs. But for the Chiefs right now, job one is get to the playoffs. Forget about getting back to the Super Bowl. At the moment, you're reeling, and your defense is the worst in the NFL. So you need to figure out how do you stop the rot and just make sure you make the postseason, then figure out the other problems. This at least showed that the defense is not going to be so bad against every other team in the NFL that you can't make mistakes on offense. They showed that against a team like Washington, it's not like have the worst offense in the NFL. Against a team like Washington, you're at least viable. And that is enough to mean that you can still turn the ball over a couple of times in critical situations and still put up 31 points. I think takeaway number one is the Chiefs' defense is bad, but it's not as bad as it looked in the first 5 weeks. Takeaway number two is, how do the Chiefs keep turning the ball over in such critical situations? It's not even the number of turnovers they're committing, because they're not that bad. They're middle of the pack somewhere. But it's that every single one of them is in opposition territory in a key situation.
Yes.
And often in a ridiculous circumstance, like a pass that ricochets off the hands of his receivers, or for some reason Mahomes turning into like.
That was one of the. Mahomes has bad interception luck on the Tyreek play. Just throws a quick out. Tyreek stumbles, puts his hands up, goes off his hands. So we got a deep red zone interception there.
They have 10 turnovers in opposing territory, and I think the next highest team is at 4.
Yeah, and some have been in the fourth quarter.
6.
In the fourth quarter when they, could have won games. I mean, that's why the Chiefs are 3-3. Obviously, they overcame it in this game, but Tyreek Hill drop turns into an interception. Mahomes offset that basically with 2 turnover-worthy plays on the same play, drops the snap, and then tries to salvage it by throwing it, ends up throwing a pop-up for an interception. That was also before the half when they're at least in field goal range. So the Chiefs took 6 to 14 points off the board just because of those turnovers. And, Mahomes, because that play in part, he also missed a few other throws here and there. Mahomes' grade's not going to be great again. And so, but at the same time, there were elements of his game that I really liked. He still continues to pick up 1, 2, 3 first downs with his legs. And he was making, the last couple weeks, he's made a few more in rhythm throws here and there. A couple in rhythm, just straight go balls, which isn't always Mahomes' game, right? It's just hits the top of his drop, puts it up there. Made some nice throws to Mecole Hardman, had a cover 2 shot to Byron Pringle. I mean, they started to get some other guys involved. And then there were always plays, man, where it's like, here's this dump off to Tyreek Hill. There's 3 defenders. Yeah. They got to make this big stop. Like that great tackle that Trey Brown made for the Seahawks corner. You never see that with Tyreek Hill. He always finds a way to maximize it. So, look, the Chiefs' offense remains very difficult to stop, but it was encouraging that they got Hardman involved and Pringle involved and DeMarcus Robinson involved with that last touchdown, right? Those were in rhythm go balls where Mahomes started to spread the ball a little bit. Even Fortson, the backup tight end, had a 27-yard jump ball catch that he got hurt, but it was a little bit better as far as the Chiefs distributing the ball in this one.
One of the best graded Chiefs defenders in the game, Juan Thornhill.
Yeah, good to see him.
Replaced Daniel Sorensen. Like, this is a move that everybody has been saying, why have you not made this already? Daniel Sorensen has been an absolute liability for this defense, and you have a guy that you drafted reasonably high that has some good play in his resume already, just sitting there on the bench waiting to be put in. Like, there are several incremental changes you can make to personnel on this Chiefs defense to make them better, in addition to just being better by not facing really good offenses. Thornhill over Sorensen is one obvious move to make. I think there's another obvious move to make in sitting Ben Neiman down and putting Willie Gay Jr. on the field more. Like, that is a guy who, in theory, looks potentially a significantly better player. You have them the other way around. There's also the moving Chris Jones back inside thing when he comes back, which is a move that we've talked about before. There are things that this team can do to tinker with the personnel and get better, and they haven't yet done them.
That might be a daily, man. How the Chiefs can get back on track. We'll get into a 10-minute breakdown of that. That is the interesting thing about this thing, right? I mean, I know we're paid to come out here and have weekly takes and the whole thing, and it's easy to overreact. But the Chiefs they might have a couple moves that help their defense creep back toward average. And yesterday might have been the start.
There aren't many teams where you look and they have a terrible defense, and you look at the roster and you say there's like 3 obvious moves to make to just get better, right? And if I was a betting man, I would say each and every one of those moves would make you better. Not just like, here's 3 random things we could try because what the hell could go wrong? No, like there are 3 things that I'm pretty sure each one of them would make you better. And this is the first time you've done one of them. This game also featured one of the most ridiculous plays I've ever seen.
Mahomes?
Tershawn Wharton.
The interception.
He had a helmet catch on an interception on like a quick game pass to the flat, and you see the defensive end jump up and bat it down or intercept it. He intercepted it, and he caught it with a helmet catch, but instead of using his own helmet, he used the right tackle's helmet.
Yeah,
like he batted the ball down and then trapped it against the right tackle's helmet and ended up somehow maintaining possession of it, despite the right tackle like flapping around trying to knock it loose. I've never seen that before.
Bad luck for Taylor Heineke because that pass generally just gets batted down most of the time. And a great play by Wharton to just, stick it.
I've never seen that, I don't think.
Mahomes also had the ridiculous play that got negated juked. I don't know who it was a defensive tackle. I don't know who it was that fell over.
Yeah, that wasn't good.
Because, I talked about last week, the Bills did a nice job kind of mirroring Mahomes sometimes.
I can't believe they negated that play.
Yeah.
It was like, that's one of those
Kelsey
plays.
got held. He's on the ground. And then he dove into somebody's legs trying to stop.
That's one of those plays where it feels like the officials are morally obligated because of the result to be like, we're going to pick up the plays. Like, the way they don't broadcast any of the official conversations because clearly they don't want you to hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
This was the play that justifies that because nobody's listening. You could have all gotten a huddle and said, that play was absurd. We need to find a way of letting it stand. Like, I know it was an obvious hole.
This is the one where
Kelsey.
Mahomes scrambles to the right. He jukes the defensive tackle who falls over.
Scrambles to
the right, throws it back across his body, hits Tyreek in stride.
Yeah, off like one leg, flings it back across into the middle of the field to Tyreek Hill. This was the play that was in Brett Favre's mind in the end of the 2009 NFC Championship game where he threw the ridiculous interception intended for Sidney Rice and lost the game for them. That was the play in his brain when he did that. Like, Mahomes executed it. And the officials negated it because of a flag on Travis Kelce and then a flag on a play that Travis Kelce was a part of. Like, just get in the huddle, all decide that was an incredible play. We need to make sure that stays a play. Let's just pick up the flags.
You'd be a good
No
man.
harm, no foul. Nobody's listening.
How exciting was the play? Incredible. Let it stand. Just let it stand.
As long as you're not broadcasting, the second you put microphones on them and you actually hear what they're saying, then you can't do that.
As long as it's behind closed doors.
As long as you're hiding the way the sausage is made, Steve. Nobody wants to see how the sausage is made. So make the sausage, however you need to make it.
Let's go Bengals 34, Lions 11. There's not much to discuss on this game. Bengals go to 4-2, and maybe as your Bengals fan, there's all the more heartbreak after last week. Not pulling the game off against the Packers. Bengals are this close to being 5-1, man.
I saw somebody refer to this game as the Heartbreak Bowl. Just seemed kind of fitting.
Just both fan bases.
And before the game, there was a Bengals radio thing, and they were talking about just like all the parallels between the Lions and the Bengals as franchises, over the years. Good. But now you've got Cincinnati on the up and up. Detroit isn't there yet. But the two things I think to talk about in this game. Look, obviously, Jamar Chase versus Penei Sewell. And the argument is tired. But I think we're seeing
Is
now.
it, though?
Yes.
Let's exhaust it.
No, it's tired. The idea, I said at the time, it's close. It was a coin flip. Nobody is smart enough to correctly quantify all of the millions of factors involved in this and actually come to an educated decision. So basically just pick the guy that you liked better. I would have gone Chase, but I wouldn't have argued strongly with anybody that thought it should be Sewell. But I think what we're seeing is not only is Chase proving the logic of everybody that was like arguing the Chase side of it, right? Which is giving a quarterback a receiver and a place to go with the ball quickly. It mitigates a lot of problems on the offensive line, and it will make the offensive line look better, right? But we're also seeing that specifically pairing Joe Burrow back up with Jamar Chase, where they had such a freakish connection at LSU, is a value add on top of just how good Jamar Chase is. Like, obviously the stats speak for themselves in terms of deep shots this year, but look at the placement that Burrow has. It's like when I was watching Jamar Chase's college tape, you were like, I don't know how many of these plays I can take anything from because it's 40 yards downfield and Burrow is putting the ball in his hands as if he walked up and placed it there. Like, that's not normal. Like,
right, you're not going to have that in the NFL.
Chase is not getting separation and is not adjusting to the ball. Like, he's literally doing nothing except catching a pass placed in his hands.
Don't overrate that, by the way. Chase can separate.
I'm not saying
he separates.
I'm not
late.
saying I'm not saying
You're saying
he can't.
a couple throws.
I'm saying there were enough plays in his college tape where he literally didn't have to do any of that. And you have to toss those out as I'm literally getting nothing from this play other than Burrow's placement was absurd.
Yeah.
He's hitting those plays again now. And when you look at last year, he wasn't even in the ballpark of connecting on those with anybody. Like, there's something about the comfort level he has with Jamar Chase where it just puts him in this zen zone where he's just able to put the ball where he wants to.
We studied this a couple of years ago too. Brady with Gronk, Big Ben with Antonio Brown, big time throw percentage goes up when you're sometimes with these connections, right? So if you're discussing Brady and Gronk throughout their career and you go through their highlight reel, there are a few plays where you're like, wow, Gronk, that's all Gronk. That's ridiculous. There are other plays where it's like, how did Tom Brady make that throw? Which always felt like he's just going to make that throw with the confidence he's throwing to Gronk, or Big Ben making a ridiculous throw with the confidence he's throwing to Antonio Brown. Like, I do think there is a factor there, and having the Burrow-Chase connection is huge. I mean, then you tried to say, well, mathematically, how do you sort this out? Well, because yesterday, 4 catches for 97 yards, including a 53-yarder. When Jamar Chase makes a good play, you're moving the chains or creating an explosive play plus over and over and over again. And Penei Sewell, when he has a good play or a good pass block, well, the result of the play is still at the mercy of, 10 other guys. Whereas Burrow and Chase can kind of take over. So that's the value of receivers. If you're a dominant receiver, you can offset other failures because you're just better than everybody, and that's, I think, what we're seeing with Jamar Chase right now.
Chase has the most deep receptions of any receiver in the NFL, the most deep yards of any receiver in the NFL, the most deep touchdowns of any receiver in the NFL, and the most deep first downs of any receiver in the NFL. He is statistically the most potent deep threat in the NFL right now, and this was with a quarterback who was arguably the worst deep thrower in the NFL a year ago. There is some, and look, Jamar Chase is fantastic, but I think it's very important to recognize that this isn't just Jamar Chase. The connection between Burrow and Chase is greater than the sum of the two individuals. And that is why in that coin flip, I would have erred on the Chase side because of this potential. Now, this is like, we're hitting the 100th percentile of what this potential was.
Right, yeah. Right now we are.
This was what you were chasing if you were going for that side.
Yeah, and again, NFL people generally say tackles safer, receivers more risky, and that's honestly because you're probably judging tackles by starts. Sure. I mean, Penei Sewell started all 6 games.
And Penei Sewell played well yesterday, by the way.
And that's fine. But the Chase pick is paying off right now for the Bengals. Yeah. That's the bottom line. The other guy I want to highlight is Chris Evans, the backup running back. He had 49 yards through the air and a touchdown.
Really nice diving grab.
He's one of those guys. He played at Michigan, wasn't targeted often. He had a decent receiving grade for 2 out of his 4 years there. But he goes to the Senior Bowl, and they have that two-way go drill on linebackers. He just looked really shifty and a good receiver. He's one of those few guys where you didn't get to always see it in college, but you saw it when you put him in the All-Star game situation. The Bengals get him later in the draft. I really like him as a pass game complement.
He looked really good. Do you want the dumbass box score quirk that came out of this game?
Yes, of course.
Those are always fun. Joe Burrow has thrown multiple touchdowns for 6 straight games now, becoming only the second quarterback in NFL history to throw multiple touchdowns in his first 6 games in his first 2 seasons, joining
Peyton Manning?
No. Who's the quarterback that always has this statistic for anything?
Oh, Dan Marino.
There you go.
Oh, so Joe, yeah, sorry. First 2 seasons, yeah.
Yep. Dan Marino's
there you go. Second season.
So Burrow to Chase.
He breaks the touchdown.
Now, do we talk about Dan Campbell torching Jared Goff after the game?
Go for it.
So press conference, Dan. Look, he's sad again. It's always tough, right? You throw a microphone in somebody's face when they're emotional, you're going to get some things. And to be fair to Dan, he was really measured when he said this. They basically asked him about Jared Goff. I didn't hear the question, actually. But he said, look, it would be unfair to evaluate a quarterback in this situation, essentially. Like, you can't. I'm not sure how much you can fairly take anything from this. Then had an incredibly long pause and went, basically, but. Jared Goff has got to start making some more plays, taking some more weight in his shoulders, doing some things. It was basically like, yeah, look, this is a bad situation and any quarterback's going to look bad. On the other hand, yes, Jared Goff has sucked and needs to be better, which is kind of fair, I think. Like, it's a horrible situation. He's got no shot. On the other hand, he's too much Jared Goff right now and needs to be better.
Yeah, it could be better. I mean, they were also last week running screens every 3rd and long and the whole thing. It is a really bad situation.
I just thought that was a really, like, if you actually go and watch the clip, it's just a really fascinating way he delivered that, because couch the whole thing in, like, look, it's not a great situation. Jared doesn't really have a chance. And then there was like easily 5 seconds of just dead silence. And then was like, but he's got to do all this stuff better.
All right, we got a few more games to get through here. Packers 24, Bears 14. So Packers remain the team in the NFC North. You didn't have the Justin Fields takeover.
No. He got a bit unlucky, though. Did you see the play where he basically arm punted, thinking that he had the free play and didn't?
Yeah.
That's harsh. That's unlucky.
You got to know that you have a free play.
I mean,
but
the flag comes in.
There's an awareness to it. The line judge throws the flag almost immediately.
Yeah, but the line judge throws the flag. Like, you are looking downfield to see where can I take advantage of this free play, and the flag is coming in from like way over in your periphery. I mean, sure, you kind of need to make sure before you toss it in the air, but like there was a pretty good reason to think that that was a free play, and it wasn't.
Yeah, I think he had another throwaway, right? That should have been, that was intercepted.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the Bears' offense might just be not good, is the bottom line.
Well, sure. I mean, it isn't.
Whether it's Andy Dalton, whether it's Justin Fields, it's just not a good offense.
Yeah.
Overall.
But
And
I
that's
do
the
think
issue.
that was kind of unlucky. That's all I'm saying.
No, that's fair.
This is kind of what you expected Fields to look like. It isn't catastrophic. It's viable, but it's not amazing either. Like, it isn't. Like, the people that were clamoring for the idea of Justin Fields clearly gives you a much better chance of winning games than Andy Dalton. I mean, he probably does, but it isn't obvious. Like, he gives you a higher ceiling, and the variance is higher. But like, is he? I mean, he had 174 passing yards. Like, how impressive is this right now? Like, sure, if your point is you put him in there because he's a rookie and there's upside and there's no upside to Andy Dalton, absolutely. If your point is just like Andy Dalton sucks, Justin Fields won't suck, so put him in, you're not exactly being proved a genius right now.
No, I agree. I mean, he adds 43 yards as a runner, loses another 37 on the 4 sacks. I mean, that has been part of, I guess, the expectation with Fields. There's a little bit more volatility. He'll take some more negative plays. He'll add some more positive plays. The Bears, I can't completely figure out the Bears' defense too, because there's a few times the pass rush just looks. I mean, the pass rush has been really good this year, where they just look spectacular. The coverage grade is terrible, but they still seem to be not playing okay as far as the pass game goes. They just couldn't stop. I mean, Rodgers. What did he say? What did he say to the Bears fans or whatever? I mean, Rodgers.
I still own you. I still own you.
It's kind of true.
I mean, it is.
The 16-yard rushing touchdown from Aaron Rodgers seals the deal. And yeah, not much has changed through that lens.
Rodgers played a lot more like old Rodgers than he has most of the season. Like, that was a lot closer to vintage Aaron Rodgers than we've seen from him. They asked him about that after the game as well, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just black out when you're playing." I don't actually remember saying that, but yeah, I mean, there's not much you can argue with it. Like, it's on camera; it happened.
It's an emotional game.
Yeah,
I've played unemotional games and said emotional things. I've played, and it's just stuff happens. It's all right.
You're trying to tell me you're going to be trash talking when you're firing baseballs at me?
So the way I would get, I'll probably have to do this again. The way I would get, the coffee into my system, the caffeine flowing, and
you're gonna chain drink coffee before this?
Oh, before you pitch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to be jittery before you're firing 90-mile-an-hour balls at me.
I'm not jittery. I'm just saying caffeine is a performance enhancer. The first time I pitched drinking coffee, I was 2 to 3 miles an hour up.
See, I don't care.
Velocity.
I
was up 2 to 3 miles an hour.
I have very little interest in the speed that the ball is going to be traveling. My interest is in where it's going to be going.
I know, but I'm saying I want to maximize my velocity.
I would imagine that the more caffeine you consume, the broader the spectrum.
I'll be fine.
The broader the spectrum.
It won't play the same because I'm addicted to it now. So you see, so it's.
We just have to go harder.
I'm just saying I would get jacked up. I only worked 15 minutes a week, Sam. Right? Yeah. I'd throw three innings, 5 minutes apiece. Sometimes those innings took long, but you work 15, 20 minutes a week. You get jacked up, and you say some crazy things.
Yeah.
Out on the mound, and I'm going to do that when I'm facing you. So I don't blame Aaron Rodgers.
All right.
He had a tap pass for a touchdown though. Made the stats look good.
Gotta love it.
And Aaron Jones, surfing through the defense. I'm just saying, like, the Bears' defense is quietly, like, kind of keeping them in games, and their offense is bad. The defense, I can't figure it out, though. Coverage grade's horrible, and they're just still kind of keeping things close. Bears they go from Aaron Rodgers this week to Brady and the Bucs next week. So
excellent.
Packers, after the disaster in Week 1, now they're 5-1.
Yeah.
Defense playing a little bit better in recent weeks here for the Packers. Are they any other different thoughts on them? I mean, they're not nearly as dominant as they were last year, but look, they're 5-1. They're winning games.
Yeah, and I think they're as reliant on their star power as they were a year ago, and the star power hasn't been as good this year as it was last season. Now, you can look at that two ways. One, when they face the best teams in the NFL in the playoffs, things will unspool quickly because the guys that are keeping them winning games right now are not playing as well, and that doesn't work against the best teams. Or you can look at it and say, well, if those guys get better, if those guys get back to their peak play, then all of a sudden we're cooking. Like, Devontae Adams has been as good as he was last year, but Rodgers hasn't. I don't think Jair Alexander has as well, and there hasn't been much around those guys to pick up any slack. So the good news is they're 5-1, and it hasn't cost them that much playing at a lower level than they were a year ago. The bad news is that if they don't play better, I mean, how much confidence do you have in them beating the Bucs or the Rams or one of the other teams that we expect to be in the last couple of games in the NFC?
But Packers have the football team next week. Then they go to Arizona. That's a Thursday night game. Go to Arizona. Then they have the Chiefs.
Good Thursday night games coming up.
Yeah, we get Browns, Browns, and then Packers, Cardinals the next couple of weeks. We finally maybe get to see Aaron Rodgers versus Patrick Mahomes in Week 9. We'll see. It was Matt Moore versus Rodgers a couple of years ago, right?
God.
Was it? Yeah, Rodgers versus Matt Moore, and then, of course, the Bucs made the Super Bowl instead of the Packers. So Cardinals and Chiefs, Seahawks, I don't know if Russ is back for that by Week 10, and then at the Vikings and then the Rams. So the Packers, after the football team, they've got a stretch where, again, they're not as dominant as they were last year. If they play at this level, I think they lose a couple of those games.
Right.
So we'll see what the next stretch for the Packers right after the football team is going to be telling here. Where else? Arizona Cardinals, 37. Cleveland Browns, 14. What'd you make of this one, Sam?
Cardinals just keep making statements. Like,
that's what I'm thinking, yeah.
We're for real.
They're answering every test.
Yep.
Emphatically.
Yeah.
Emphatically. 37-14.
And every time you think that the defense is kind of, riding its luck and they're going to come unstuck against a particular type of offense, no, I mean, it's exactly the same as it was before. They just keep rolling, and they look impressive doing it. Now, I do think there's still a couple of, unsustainable elements to their play. Kyler Murray's play under pressure in particular is ridiculous right now, and that has to come back down to earth even over the course of a season. It's just nobody can sustain that kind of level. But the defense was really good. They dominated the Browns' offense, which has been really good. Now, there's some caveats to that, right? Cleveland were down a couple of offensive linemen. They were down Nick Chubb. They then lost Kareem Hunt in the game. Baker Mayfield re-injured his shoulder.
Jarvis Landry out.
Right, Odell Beckham goes out. We were chipping away at this Browns offense to the point where I'm not sure how much, we were taking a chisel to the marble, right? And there's only so much hammering away at the statue of David you can do before it starts to look a lot less like the statue of David. That's kind of what we're doing to this Browns offense yesterday. So you have to at least factor that in. But the Cardinals look really good.
Yeah, I mean, look, their defense is flying around. J.J. Watt had a couple nice pressures in there. Marcus Golden made some plays. I want to stay on the Cardinals because I've got some Browns thoughts on Baker and the whole thing. But, I mean, it's another situation. Kyler drops one into A.J. Green for a touchdown. So A.J. Green this week was the leading receiver for the Cardinals. This is what I love about this team because you've got Christian Kirk had the nice touchdown on the corner route. Kyler buys some time to get it to him. DeAndre Hopkins, he finds the end zone twice, couple scores. They haven't had to feed Hopkins. Hopkins had 4 targets. He caught 3 of them, 2 scores. Great. In any given week, you could feed Hopkins all you want, But you can have a Rondell game. You can have a Christian Kirk game.
It's like the Bucs.
Yesterday, A.J. Green. I mean, you are spreading the ball. It is very much like the Bucs. Plus Kyler, he didn't have to run yesterday, but in games when he needs to run, he can do that.
And this is before.
You've had Chase Edmonds also running the ball extremely well.
And this is before they get Zach Ertz involved to replace what they had in Max Williams, who was another part of that rotation. Like, I think when they pivoted away from the 10 personnel last year and kind of went towards using a tight end, the longer they've been in that mode, the more Max Williams was becoming a significant part of this offense. In theory, Zach Ertz will try and pick up that slack. So, again, it's just another weapon. And unlike the Bucs, they become extremely difficult to try and neutralize in any given week.
So they've just got playmakers, man. Very impressive by the Cardinals. On the Browns side, I didn't think Baker Mayfield played a great game.
No, he played badly. Baker Mayfield right now is not only is he not playing as well as he needs to in terms of just accuracy and ball placement and all those kinds of things, but all of the intangible things that you always liked about Baker have disappeared. Like the idea that he was sort of clutch, he made critical plays when you needed him to. He sort of had that. Like, you watch him play and you're like, how much of this can you have before your teammates lose faith in you? Like, how much just bumbling around in the pocket and then falling over in a heap under a defender in this ridiculous 8 seconds into the play, we're like, how did you possibly think you had another 2 seconds in this? It's one thing to squirm out of the initial tackle attempt and then get away and then get rid of that ball, get it out of your hands, get it gone, whatever you need to do. That's fine. But he's trying to do that 3 times in a play. The second and third ones are never an option. Unless you are Kyler Murray, which you're not, unless you're Lamar Jackson, unless you are a super freak of an athlete, you don't have the second or third attempt at evading a tackle and a defender. And he just keeps doing that. And you're like, how many of those plays can you make before your teammates are like, dude, what are you doing back there? This is not, we no longer have faith that you're the guy to steer this ship in the right direction.
The problem I have with Baker and, say, the way he played yesterday, James Hudson and Blake Hance get the start at tackle. Hudson's a rookie, Hance is...
And that was a major problem.
But was it?
Yes. Yes, it was.
No, I think Baker makes it worse.
He makes it worse, but it was a major problem already.
They had a better pass blocking grade by far than the Cardinals. The Browns, so this is my point here. Even a couple years ago when it was Greg Robinson and Chris Hubbard at tackle, if you go back and look at their PFF grades, they weren't good at all. They also weren't the worst tackle tandem in the league that year. They were not terrible. I think Baker has this, I think the name talent there, it's he knows I've got backup tackles, and he plays differently. And it's not like some quarterbacks rush and they play differently. Some quarterbacks, they're like, hey, I've got backup linemen. I have guys I don't trust. I'm going to get rid of the ball quickly. Baker goes the other way and says, I'm going to bail from clean pockets. I'm not going to step up in the pocket. I'm going to try to make a Mahomesian play, a Russell Wilson play, a Josh Allen play, whatever it is. And to your point, it works once in a while. He had that great, he rolled out and he hit Odell Beckham. It works once in a while, but he took 5 sacks. And those weren't, there were some where it was just, hey, guys got beat and he gets killed. But there's other, it's just he's dancing around and he's trying to slip a tackle. What do you think the rest of the defense is doing? When you're trying to slip a tackle, they're all coming after you. They're going to be a lot closer.
The other thing is you are injured. You need to be you need to be your best protector right now and get rid of the damn ball.
Remember when Aaron Rodgers a couple years ago, he had hit this downward trend in his play from very high, from elite. He had hit a trend, and there would be a wide open slant, and he just wouldn't take it. He'd scramble out and whatever. Then he got hurt against the Bears, and all of a sudden his time to throw chopped it in not in half, of course, but chopped half a second off his average time in the pocket, started playing from within structure, and he had a great little run, I think 2018 or whatever it was. I almost feel like Baker needs that, not the hurt part of it. He is hurt. He needs that epiphany where it's look, he spent over 3 seconds in the pocket yesterday, 3 seconds from snap to release. Can you do it in 2.5? Can you just get rid of the ball and play within the structure of the offense more?
His other problem is his injury isn't going away. He's hurt. He has a partially torn labrum. He almost certainly has a worse torn labrum now than he did 24 hours ago. Like, he got flattened by J.J. Watt, I think, on that play. His shoulder bent in a weird angle that you don't like. Apparently popped out again. So Baker Mayfield right now is Riggs from Lethal Weapon. Remember that movie?
Yeah.
Like Mel Gibson, and his shoulder would keep popping out, and you had to go, like, bash it back in on a post or something.
You go to the blue tent.
That's Baker Mayfield, except instead of a post, he goes to the blue tent, and the dude wrenches on his shoulder and puts it back in place. Like, that's what he's dealing with now for the rest of the season and maybe beyond. You can't go screwing around behind the line of scrimmage and just inviting hits. Your shoulder is going to pop out repeatedly, and apparently when it does that, you're not the most accurate quarterback in the world.
Yeah.
So maybe protect yourself a little bit, get rid of the damn ball, and stop screwing around in the pocket. Because aside from anything else, you're bad at that. Like, you're not you were okay at it in college when, you were a better athlete relative to everybody else. But now you're dealing with people like J.J. Watt chasing you down, who outweighs you by like 80 pounds and is a foot taller than you and is faster than you are, and you're dead. You can't play like that.
That was the way I used to describe Favre. You mentioned the crossbody throw that he made. It was one of the worst in NFL history in the NFC Championship. When he gets outside the pocket, like, he's remembering the times it worked. The few times. And Favre was remembering the highlight reel when he threw across his body and it worked, and he's forgetting all the times it didn't. I feel like that's Baker.
But Favre, at least, like, if you look at the entirety of his NFL career, probably had a fairly favorable distribution of those plays. Like, he made way more of those plays than most people in NFL history. And then you have Patrick Mahomes coming along, making way more than anybody ever has ever achieved, and, like, resetting everybody's expectations of what you can actually achieve doing that. Baker Mayfield is neither of those guys right now, but plays like he thinks he is. Like, particularly Favre. Baker has drawn comparisons to Favre in the past, and I don't think they're terrible ones in terms of style of play.
No, there's definitely elements to that.
But he's not as good as Favre used to be at that stuff. He can't do it to the same degree, and even if he could, I think the league is better defending it than it used to be.
Favre also played in the West Coast offense that got the ball out of his hands for the most part.
But, like, you can't. Baker is right now the architect of a lot of his own problems and needs to somehow pull it together and do a better job of that. But also, in addition to that, like, for the second week in a row, they had this bizarre.
That's what I wanted to get to as well.
Not even a 2-minute drill, like, quick drive before either the end of the half or the end of a game, which, like, goes nowhere, and then you leave yourself shooting Hail Marys to try and end it. Now, this one he hit, and last week they didn't. But what is he doing on those drives?
So it was the end of the half. They had no timeouts, you telling me?
Correct.
Even though the graphic said they had 3.
Right.
So they hit 3 short passes to just convert a first down. They had enough time to at least take a couple chances to get into field goal range. So it looked like this horrible drive. They didn't even get into a good Hail Mary situation. But the one thing that salvaged it is Baker Mayfield does have a cannon for an arm. And he throws the ball up for the Hail Mary, and Donovan Peoples-Jones goes up and gets it.
A 57-yard touchdown pass, which, according to NGS, traveled 66.4 yards in the air, which is the longest completed pass since Next Gen Stats has been tracking this stuff.
And
by
those,
2 yards.
Those yards are they're also not taking in, like, the actual diagonal there too. He was, I don't think.
It was unclear from their tweet.
I'm pretty sure it's like they do it from, like, the point of the throw, I believe. I don't think they're, like, channeling Pythagoras or anything like that, trying to figure out where the ball's going.
I thought that's what they were doing.
I think they just say, well, he was 7 yards behind the line of scrimmage and it landed 3 yards into the end zone. Therefore, it's 66 or whatever.
Either way, that's the longest by 2 whole yards.
Either way,
by the way, what the hell were the Cardinals doing on that play on defense?
Know.
There were like 3 players that were 5 yards short of the end zone, not in a tremendous hurry to back up and cover the players that were going to be in the end zone. And they were like cornerbacks. It wasn't even as if, those were your linebacker level people that were kind of, somewhere short just to make sure you didn't deliver like a 20-yard pass and tried to pick it all up after the catch. Like, those were the corners that you would have expected to be in the end zone challenging for the ball. Now, maybe if you're giving them some shred of credit, you say they were kind of playing the distances and didn't anticipate the ball traveling 66.4 yards in the air, and when it did...
Well, you don't care if they complete any other pass is
right.
the problem.
That's my point. So it feels weird for those guys not to have been in the end zone. On the other hand, it was a 66.5-yard pass, so maybe they just didn't see it traveling that far.
Anyway, that was one of the 2 Browns touchdowns. So they locked into that. It was a dominant performance by the Arizona Cardinals. Again, I love the way they're winning offensively. The one other note I want to make, the Browns secondary, that I thought they made a lot of good moves, bringing in a lot of good players. There is just coverage bust after coverage bust on the back end for the Browns. And I don't know if that's just, they need to figure it. That's the thing. Like when you have talented players, so much of football is just like, hey, I got this guy, you get that guy. Communicate. It doesn't matter how talented you are if you don't communicate. Browns can't have that if they're going to be a good team.
There's a lot of coverage busts. There's also a lot of players just getting beat. Like they have 4 good corners at this point. Greedy Williams has come in since Greg Newsome has been injured and played really well, actually. So if you count like Greedy Williams, Greg Newsome, Denzel Ward, Troy Hill, that's 4 legitimate good cornerbacks. You've got at least 1 proven quality good safety in John Johnson. You've probably got a second one. That's 6 players in a secondary that you would say are good players that most teams would want to have. And yet they're getting, even independent of the coverage busts, they're getting beaten way often than that level of player should be getting beaten. And that's costing them.
All right, let's go to the Cowboys' big win over the New England Patriots, 35-29. We discussed the Cowboys and their Super Bowl possibilities here on the PFF NFL Daily today. So I've already broken that down a little bit, but Cowboys win in overtime. I know we get a lot. We've already discussed a lot, but there's a lot to talk about in this game. Dak was incredible. Dallas Cowboys offense, their pass game, looking pretty unstoppable, even though New England did a really good job against them for the majority of the game. But when it came down to crunch time, the Cowboys offense just wins this game.
So this was like in week 1, Dallas kept it really close against Tampa Bay, and you're like, yeah, but only kind of because of the turnovers. This was actually a game that wasn't as close as the final score. This was the same thing, but the other way. Like Dallas was, I think, significantly better in this game, but like they turned it over in the end zone twice. Like we've been talking about Kansas City's turnovers have been happening in opposing territory. Dallas turned it over in the end zone of the opposition twice. So this game should have been, I think, significantly more of a comfortable victory for them than it ended up being.
There were 3 touchdowns within the first 10 minutes or so of the game. Then there was some, normal scoring and various things that happened. And then after the 6:50 mark in the fourth quarter, there was another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scores, 4 of which were touchdowns. So it was like top heavy, and it was crazy.
I mean, there were like ridiculous. 2 touchdowns in like whatever it was, like 12 seconds.
Right. So just to recap what happened in the fourth quarter, the Patriots looked like they were on their way to one of those, okay, hard fought, defense kept it tough. However you want to look at this, right? Dak did throw a dangerous pass that was intercepted in the end zone.
Yeah, that was a bad turnover.
But the Patriots,
Dak's fault, just a poor
Patriots
location.
Forced it. Dak has the fumble on the QB sneak at the goal line.
Yeah, which is just...
it's a debatable play.
Yeah, you
thought it was a touchdown.
It was a touchdown.
I thought that
clearly broke the plane.
I thought so. Juwan Bentley jumps up. So Dak tries to do the over the top.
Yeah.
Right. And the fun part about that is as soon as the ball crosses the goal line, if he has possession of it, the play's dead. I think Juwan Bentley punches it. The ball moves a little bit.
Yeah.
It eventually comes out. There's a debate about whether he had possession over the goal line or not. Either way.
It comes out of one of his hands. It never leaves his left hand until after it's broken the plane of the goal. That should absolutely have been a touchdown. And even if it wasn't, the one before definitely should have. Like,
see, I don't think the one before
buries himself into the pile, and he's like entire body is over the line. They're like, nah, he's down at the 6-inch line.
I thought his knee went down pretty early on the second down QB sneak. But regardless of that, however you want to look at it, Dallas turned it over. New England forced the turnovers. So it looks like this old school Patriots game. They're shutting down this Cowboys offense. It's 21-20. Patriots are winning. And then Mac Jones, who, by the way, was fantastic in this game. And we'll talk about that and their conservative Patriots approach in a second. They're up 1. Mac Jones has missed 1 throw this entire game. It was a slant. He misses his second throw, also a slant. Trevon Diggs, nice job. It was kind of like short area to pick it up. He takes it back for a pick 6. Dallas is now up 26-21 after a failed 2-point conversion. So Mac Jones and the Patriots come back the very next play with a double move on Trevon Diggs, and Kendrick Bourne goes 75 yards. DeMonte Casey, I mean, It went 75 yards because he made a bad play at safety.
Yeah.
Runs right by him. But a 75-yarder. So now the Patriots are up 29-26. Dallas comes back, converting 4th downs and 3rd downs and all this stuff. They get into field goal range to tie it at 29. And then in overtime, Dak, 35-yarder to CD Lamb for a walk-off touchdown, 35-29. Incredible back-and-forth game. Dallas moves to 5-1. The Patriots are now 2-4. The Patriots, let's talk Patriots really quick here. Before the half, they have 90 seconds, and they just take a knee. 90 seconds in today's NFL, and they take a knee. And all Bill Belichick could say was, we're getting the ball in the second half.
Yeah. That's why you go for it, not why you don't.
It's just you play football. You only get so many possessions. The whole point of getting the ball in the second half is to steal an extra possession.
Right.
You all of a sudden lose your possession advantage.
Yes, in addition to the one that you have before the half. Like, that's the whole point, is you get to double dip and score twice in the time the opposition is sitting on the sideline.
So here's the thing. Clearly, Belichick's played with Brady for 20 years, and Brady would, if they had 90 seconds, the majority of the time they'd go. Belichick, though, would pick random times. Like if the offense was struggling, he would just say, nope, I'm taking a knee. I'm just going into the half. Even with Brady, there was a handful of times in the 2019, like when the offense wasn't great, he would just say, I'm taking a knee. I'm not even going to try it. But first off, the offense wasn't struggling. Mac Jones he was like 7 for 7 at the time because they weren't throwing the ball, but he hadn't missed a throw. And in today's NFL, the ability to get 30 or 40 yards in the pass game and the 2-minute drill, I keep saying this, it's easy. Like they left at least 3 points, or at least a 3-point attempt on the table. And it was like and then they continue to punt at their own 46, right around the 50. They continue to punt, and 4th and 2 and 4th and 1 and all this stuff. And just this uber conservative approach from the Patriots ended up costing them. And you can't do that. They're the underdog. The Patriots are now the underdog. They can't get away with playing like a favorite because they're underdogs against Dallas is a better football team. That's it.
It was bad. I don't think there's any real defending. 90 seconds is a long time in the NFL. And particularly because I don't think that NFL defenses are very good at defending 2-minute drills. So it's actually better for you.
The zones get just a little bit softer.
Yeah.
And if you're talking what's Mac Jones going to do, he's going to take the short and intermediate stuff.
So it's not great. But I think we have to at least bear in mind that New England right now is doing some fairly nutty things with a battered up offensive line. Like they have been running like a full second-team offensive line at one point in the season. They got a bit healthier, but players missed time here. If you look at just the first half pass blocking grades yesterday, there were 3 different offensive linemen that had a pass blocking grade of 17 or lower, like including 2 guys in single digits and poor old Justin Herron with a 0 grade. So there were some problems. It could have gone
completely
south.
Makeshift offensive
right.
line.
It could have gone south in a hurry if one of those like quick losses on the edge to Randy Gregory had turned into a strip sack, and all of a sudden, it's a real problem. So I can at least understand like where he's coming from in terms of like the last thing we want is a quick fumble and a Dallas score before the half, and now like we're getting the ball back just to try and answer.
Yeah, of course you don't want that.
Yeah, but you have to at least like you can't run from your offense being on the field. Like otherwise you just punt on first down you wouldn't take a drive if that was your plan. Like you'd be playing football like it was the 1930s, and you'd be like, we are the worst thing that can happen for us is to have the ball. Like we want to punt on first down, set them up, play field position, play territory, and defend from inside their territory because that's where we're going to get the turnover and make the play. Like you can't play the game like that. This is 2021. You have to assume that you having the ball is a good thing, and they didn't.
Yeah. And Mac Jones made some spectacular throws. First touchdown to Hunter Henry, just anticipation, seam route. He had that one. He's got that quick release that always looks so awkward. He had that one under pressure, and it was in crunch time. He's about to get hit. He just kind of throws it up, puts it on the dig route to Jacoby Myers. Mac Jones made some big-time throws. in that game. And like I said, he just doesn't miss. He doesn't purely miss a ton of throws.
Many at all. Yeah.
One of them goes for a pick six. I wouldn't even say I don't think it wasn't really turnover worthy. It was a high throw, gets tipped up, a little unlucky that it becomes a pick.
The ball
but it was
finds
a miss.
Trevon Diggs.
The ball does find Trevon
now,
Diggs.
He finds the ball as well. Like, he has a few picks this year that are really, really high level.
I mean, this one yesterday,
the
fact that it got to him was a little lucky. The fact that he actually caught it, I mean, look, we saw Jamal Adams take one right off his face mask yesterday because he didn't see the ball. I mean, Trevon Diggs being able to catch some of these has been incredible.
Adam Thielen caught a pass with his face mask yesterday.
It was impressive.
Literally just drilled him in the head, and he caught the rebound. Diggs is going to win Defensive Player of the Year, and his grade and stats outside
he's still
of the picks,
grading well, right? I mean, I didn't check
well, but not amazingly.
Right.
So Eric, I think, brought up the name of Delth O'Neal yesterday. Remember Delth O'Neal had that one season where he had 10 picks?
Yeah.
And he was a similar kind of high variance ball hockey type of player. And sometimes with those guys, it breaks their way and they get 10 picks in a year.
D'Angelo Hall.
Yeah.
You said Antonio Cromartie for him?
Yeah. Who had a similar, he had a big 10 pick season, right? Or something.
Yes. He had something close at one point.
But Delth O'Neal, by the way, didn't win Defensive Player of the Year that season because Urlacher did. But it would be interesting to see how many picks he's going to end up with. I would assume at this point it's double digits just because
he's on pace for 1 million.
Yes. Yeah, on pace for 1 million. And he's also on pace to give up an absolute ton of yardage, and every other number is not great.
Now, yesterday's yardage total, I think, is unfair because, just to be clear here, Diggs gets beaten on the double move by Jacoby Myers. We assign full coverage stats to one player. The safety, DeMonte Casey, gets the worst grade on that play. Diggs probably did enough to give up a 20-yarder on the double move. Safety makes the tackle. It's a 20-yard play. It's still a negative for Diggs. Now, the negative doesn't change just because it went 75 yards, but he's going to get those stats. Just saying, Diggs has given up yesterday, 4 for 5 for what ends up being 109, but the other target was an interception for a touchdown, right? So, I had to clarify yesterday in a tweet, just saying, look, he's not going to have the highest defense grade just because he's got 7 interceptions, even though what he did is ridiculous. And even though somebody does something that you've never seen before, or whatever it is, there's still more than just 7 plays in the NFL.
Yeah,
this year.
He hasn't been as impressive as the interception total has been. He's been
be
good, and he's making some incredible plays on the ball. But if he wins, right now, he should not win Defensive Player of the Year based off what we know so far. Now, who knows what happens in the next double-digit games? There's still plenty of time left to run. But Diggs through 6 weeks is not the Defensive Player of the Year, even though he would be. I would imagine everybody who's not paying attention
to the unanimous pick,
right, would put his name down right now.
There is an argument that even if interceptions in general are a little fluky, it's just the value that those bring might be worth it.
Which would be fine if all of them were him making the ball is finding him in the way.
Sure.
If you're getting double-digit picks in a year, there's a ton of them that are lucky.
Has to be luck
because nobody makes that many plays on the ball.
Also, because Kadarius Toney beat him a bunch last week, and
it's also why
teams are going to attack him.
Each one of these guys that you talk about, Cromartie, Diggs, Delth O'Neal, whoever it is you want to talk about that has a 10-pick season, they tend not to have more than one of them, because even though those guys are ball hawking cornerbacks, that doesn't happen every year, right? Typically, you get reasonably lucky, and you get 5 picks, 6 picks, and then you get really lucky one year and you get 10, 11. It doesn't happen every year. So Diggs has made a ton of really good plays, but he's also had the ball land in his lap a couple of times. And when he does, he takes advantage. But I'm not sure how much you should reward that in terms of because that play is a really good one for the team, we just give him credit for the fact that the ball landed in his lap.
We did discuss the Cowboys and Dak quite a bit on the PFF NFL Daily, so we discussed a lot more there. But just to put a bow on that, CeeDee Lamb was fantastic. He had 149 yards. You get Dalton Schultz into the mix, Amari Cooper. And again, Zeke Elliott and Tony Pollard. It wasn't, they were both fine. Dallas has options, though, offensively. They're doing a lot. They just have a lot of different options in this offense.
Another team like Arizona, like Tampa Bay, where it's you can't cover everybody they have. And CeeDee Lamb was open all game long, and it seemed like only towards the end did they decide to finally start throwing it in his direction, and got matched up with Jalen Mills a few times. And you're like, that's like the Peppers versus Cooper Kupp thing. It's like, that's just free yardage. You're not going to cover CeeDee Lamb with Jalen Mills. It isn't going to happen. And when eventually the Cowboys just decided to target that, and it was game over when they did. Literally. Touchdown. Bye-bye. Randy Gregory was also really good in this game.
He was really good, yeah.
And that's been
quick sacks.
Okay, he was a second-round pick, so there's only so much you can, we knew he had talent, right? There were off-field issues and suspension problems that kept him away from being a serious contributor. But him being back and being an impactful playmaker for them, it's significant given what he was doing in this game.
One other thing, I just want to wrap up with this. I kept saying all offseason, I think the Patriots, let's not forget, last spring went on the crazy spending spree as far as free agency goes. And from a cap standpoint, we should get Brad Spielberger on here to discuss again as we get into a little bit of offseason mode over at PFF. We start looking ahead for teams that want to. The cap hits on Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith and Jalen Mills and Kendrick Bourne and all these guys that they signed this offseason, the cap hits next year get crazy. This year, not so much. So the idea that this year they should be made better. So for every 75-yarder from Kendrick Bourne you have to get you back into the game, you also have Jalen Mills as the one who gets torched on the game winner against CeeDee Lamb. You've got Matthew Judon. He's made some good plays, but you also have Jonnu Smith, who barely even played last week, right? If you're paying him all this money as your...
just last week. That's a question to be asked is, look, this two tight end offense they're pivoting to, why are we not using them more?
They had 3 catches yesterday, and yeah, they do. Henry does stuff in the run game, but they had 3 catches last week yesterday,
and not even just 3 catches, 3 targets.
Yes.
They're not. This is not a huge part of this offense. They are instead feeding the ball to the wide receivers. Poor old Jacoby Myers just can't get in the end zone.
Oh,
guy hasn't scored a receiving touchdown, because he's passed for one. He hasn't scored a receiving touchdown since 2018. Since before COVID was a thing, since before anybody knew that COVID existed, was the last time he scored a receiving touchdown.
I thought he had 0 in his career. I thought he didn't have one in his career.
College career.
Oh, in his college. Okay,
so it goes back.
Because he was a rookie in 2019.
Right. Got in the end zone yesterday, negated. Got in the end zone again, 2-point conversion, doesn't count, not a touchdown. So the dude just cannot score a receiving touchdown.
124 receptions in his career with no touchdowns.
Yeah, which I think is approaching an all-time record or something of futility in terms of scoring for production.
And he's pretty good. This might be worth a daily or a deeper dive or whatever, but so I'll shelve it. But the Patriots being 2-4 in a year where they invested so much and at least have the roster flexibility here in year one, not great. It's not great in New England.
I think that's a potential real issue is, look, you made 2 different tight ends the joint 3rd best paid tight end in the NFL. And right now you're barely using either of them. And it's not like they suck, right? They're making plays when you give them a chance to make plays. Why are you not giving them a chance to make plays? Particularly, it feels like a natural fit, right? Mac Jones is working well over the middle, likes to take the kind of shorter stuff anyway. He would seem right now like a perfect fit to be a tight end heavy offense. Why are you not using that more?
Yeah, and look, they scored a lot of points ultimately yesterday, but they threw the ball 7 times until late in the third quarter, whatever, 10 times until late in the third quarter. See what happens in New England. Couple more games here.
To be fair, 3 targets or 2 targets for Hunter Henry is joined 3rd in the team yesterday.
True. They just didn't throw the ball very much at all. Las Vegas Raiders 34, Broncos 24. Wasn't even this close. Raiders really dominating this game, and good bounce back after the crazy week with John Gruden fired. Raiders back on track though. Offense, man, what a big play offense this was.
Yeah, and the wheels have really fallen off the Denver wagon.
So them and the Panthers, both teams we were skeptical of both 3-0 starts. Now they're both 3-3.
Right.
Were we as skeptical with the Raiders start?
I
feel like we bought in a little bit more.
I bought into their defense more.
Yeah.
I thought their offense might definitely come back down to earth after those first 3 games. What is interesting is how that defense has completely collapsed over the last few weeks.
In Denver.
Yes.
You're saying, yeah. The Denver defense Yeah, not good.
Because even after the first game of their real stretch, as opposed to the 3-0 run to start, it was like, the defense, I think, is probably for real. Whether or not Teddy Bridgewater and the offense can sustain what they've been doing is another question. But all of a sudden, the defense, it just can't stop anybody. Like, they got lit up by Pittsburgh. And then the Raiders get back on track despite having some major offensive concerns of their own. And it's the guys that we've been most confident in that are getting beat. Like, their coverages are breaking down. The corners are getting toasted. Ronald Darby ends up allowing like a massive play to Henry Ruggs with a play very similar to Darnell Savage a couple of weeks ago with the Packers, where he's in position, just misses his hand swipe. And when you do that, the ball's caught. Like, it's a big play. So Denver's defense, like, it's not holding up its end of the bargain anymore, and the offense has regressed.
Yeah, that was supposed to be what made Denver so intriguing, right? It is, and again, I think it just shows to how fragile the secondary is. Even when you put the teams that we liked what they did this offseason, or at least the way they'd built their team, the Browns, the football team, and the Broncos. Just 3 quick examples where when you read their depth chart on paper in the secondary, plus a coaching history of Vic Fangio being pretty good and the whole thing, you're like, all right, these teams, pretty good secondaries. Top 10, I don't know where we ranked them before the season, but probably in the top 10. All 3 of them, or top 15 or whatever. And you can have games where it's just, sorry, the Raiders were better. And, Henry Ruggs right off the bat with the 48-yarder that you mentioned. It was big play after big play. Beautiful pass by Derek Carr to Kenyon Drake for the 31-yard touchdown. Carr continuing to make big-time throws. He averaged 12.6 per attempt yesterday. So that is the complete opposite of what we were expecting this Broncos defense. So as good as, Carr and that deep passing game was, the Broncos were supposed to be that team that, plays the too high shell and limits those big plays. And the Raiders said, doesn't matter. We're still going to make those plays. We're going to be explosive, 34 points, and Raiders offense really doesn't miss a beat without John.
No, it looked great. And look, we said going into this game that they do match up reasonably well with Denver's defense, not because Denver doesn't have coverage, but because they don't have any pass rush, really. Like, Von Miller is their pass rush, and Von Miller had a pretty good grade, but even Von Miller this season is not the player that he used to be. He isn't that 90-grade elite best pass rusher in the NFL, Von Miller. He's still a pretty good player, but he's manageable now, right? You can at least cope with Von Miller in a game and not have him destroy the game single-handedly the way he used to be able to do. And outside of Von Miller, they just don't have anybody that's getting pressure. So the Raiders have an offensive line that's hemorrhaging pressure. But if it's one guy, there's ways to deal with that, and you can at least limit the damage. So that's basically what happened.
You did highlight that in the preview show.
Yeah.
That maybe the Raiders' offensive line against this Denver team, it's not going to be as big of an issue.
Right, so it basically worked out exactly that way. Von Miller had 6 pressures, which was by far the most in the team. Nobody else had more than 2. So the team had 12 pressures, and Von Miller had 6 of them. So essentially, the Raiders did a really good job of slowing down the only pass rush that Denver has, which means you can now function again. And that's been the issue. The Raiders' offensive line just has not let Derek Carr function over the last few weeks. But when they do, particularly as he's going to be aggressive this year and throwing it deep down the field, there are big plays to be had, and they can put up a ton of points. And then the other side, Teddy Bridgewater trying to keep pace. This is the game that was the cautionary tale before this year, which is, hey, Teddy Bridgewater isn't Alex Smith, and when things start to go south, the dude's going to put the ball in harm's way more than you need. And Teddy Bridgewater had, I think, 5 turnover-worthy plays in this game, which is a huge number.
Max Crosby with a monster game. I'm checking out the stats now. I've got the negated plays on, but we have him with 14 pressures, and we have him with 5 sacks. NFL had him with 3, so there's probably a couple half sacks in there added up or whatever. But he tackled the quarterback 5 times while the quarterback had the ball. How about that? We'll say that. And he hit him one more time. So Max Crosby not slowing down at all, Sam. Pass rush grade over 92 now for the season. Had his first sack since week 1, but he has been winning, other than the Steelers game in week 2 where the ball's out rapidly against the Steelers. Max Crosby continues to really dominate up front.
The Broncos had 12 total pressures. The Raiders had 30. So they put Bridgewater.
Yeah, Crosby had 14 himself.
Right. Well,
we'll see what
12 if you take the no plays out.
Yeah, I don't know what.
But they put Bridgewater under a ton of pressure, and Bridgewater wilted under that pressure. Didn't make the plays he needed to. Now, he put up a ton of, yards. If you look overall, production-wise, he went for, 330 yards, had 3 touchdowns, but those 5 turnover-worthy plays produced 3 interceptions, and there were some
empty yards late.
Yeah, and there was an awful lot of, ugly plays where Bridgewater's just, careening around in the pocket, and it was ugly.
Raiders moved to 4-2, and AFC West starting to Chargers losing. Chiefs are now 1 game out of first place.
Huge week for Kansas City. If their defense had looked as bad as it had, and even if they'd won against Washington, but it was a massive shootout and their defense was giving up a ton of yards, and Justin Herbert and the Chargers had beaten the Ravens, suddenly you would be looking at Kansas City and saying, this is going to be a tough road. Now, all of a sudden, okay, they still don't have a tiebreaker over the Chargers, but they're a game back, and they're in better shape, and the Chargers don't look as invincible as they did a week ago. So, a big game for Kansas City, or a big week for Kansas City.
All right, I believe we've hit every game except Sunday Night Football. Check my work. Make sure we didn't miss anything. But Pittsburgh 23, Seattle 20. In overtime, the Seahawks, oh man, always just ridiculous games on prime time. Steelers were up 14-0 at the half, and then the Seahawks run game really did get them back. Alex Collins running well, Travis Homer with a couple big runs in there as well. But just not enough. You can only protect Geno Smith so long. He made a few nice plays, but he just didn't have enough. They needed him to make a few more throws, man, and that would have been the difference. But Pittsburgh ran the ball a ton, and not very effective with Najee. But Pittsburgh pulls it off, 23-20.
You can only protect Geno Smith so long.
That's just what it felt like, right?
Yeah, that's probably fair.
There was a lot of 3rd and long screens from the Seahawks and the whole thing, and the run game really did get them back in it, which is tough to do. But they did a really nice job in the second half. But yeah, T.J. Watt with the strip sack. So what happened? T.J. Watt with the strip sack in overtime. In overtime, he stacks up Gerald Everett for, I think it was a tackle for a loss in the run game. He had a batted pass, I believe, also in overtime, and had the strip sack to put the Steelers in field goal range to win it. That was all just in overtime for T.J. Watt. I mean,
he was their best graded player. He had a couple of sacks. He had the strip sack, obviously. They timed up their pressure really well. Geno Smith was actually okay in this game, but his biggest problem was those plays, right? It's the plays where you just dither in the pocket and cause yourself some problems and take bad sacks and those kinds of plays because of it. The strip sack in overtime, TJ Watt is being double teamed, and there's 3 guys keeping an eye on him, right, on the right hand side. And Geno decides if there's a space up the middle, he's going to take off, and all that does is invalidate the blocking angle and the leverage that all of those guys trying to stop TJ Watt have. He comes off the block, follows you, chops down with the arm to make it a strip sack instead of just a sack. But that was a play that you created. That was in hand. You would erased their best pass rusher from this play, and you brought him back into it by trying to escape.
He didn't. This isn't taking anything away from T.J. Watt on this play. He didn't beat blockers to go get Geno Smith, right? He pulled away from the blockers and just went and made a great play. I mean, and that's a good point. Overall, Geno got rid of the ball quicker because what I talked about coming in was 3 seconds, snap to release in his career for Geno Smith. They did a much better job of getting the ball out of his hand, at least in this game. But again, when you take 5 sacks, there are still some plays where he's got to get rid of the ball quicker, and that ended up, in this particular case, proven to be the difference.
And that play, by the way, was a pretty clean pocket. All he needed to do maybe is take a half step forward and get rid of the ball. But instead, he decided that there are certain quarterbacks where, once you move them off their spot, they feel like, that's it, we got to go. Time's done, right? The clock has expired. I had to move. Now I've got to move. Now I've got to go. There are other quarterbacks, obviously people like Brady are the king of this, that realize that sometimes all you got to do is take you have to move. You can't just stand there, right? You've been shifted from your spot. But there are different ways of being shifted from your spot. There are sometimes you got to move because the dude is bearing down on you and you're dead. There are other times where all you got to do is move off this spot a half yard and then reset, and you're good. The pocket is still intact. The guy is still maintaining his block. It was just encroaching on where you want it to be. Geno is one of those quarterbacks where once you make him move, once you've like broken the like rhythm of where he is, he's done. He's ad-libbing from that point on and trying to make something happen. And, you know, this was a play where, like, he wanted to – it's another one of those plays, though, where it's a two-man pass pattern, you know? And when you do that and they've covered it, you don't give a guy a whole lot of options.
There's not a lot of options,
So,
right.
like, there was a potential –
He's also just – Geno's just not quick. He's not He's not agile. He's not quick. So when he does take off, I mean, that's the other part of it, right? For every quarterback that's come into the league, seemingly, over these last couple of years – has like some level of, you know, quickness and speed and the whole thing, other than, I mean, and Geno's just like well below, I think, that. But there
was a potential throw to make to DK Metcalf that he wanted to make. He thought about it and then pulled it down. Like, there was a guy undercutting that. It's the kind of throw that Rodgers makes every week, and when he makes it, you draw it up and you're like, how did he fit this ball just perfectly over the underneath defender's hands and into the hands of his receiver? It's incredible. So if you're going to give Rodgers the kind of this is incredible throw, you also have to be aware that a guy like Geno probably isn't making that throw and it's probably getting it picked off. On the other hand, Lockett, I think it was, down the sideline on the left, there was a throw to be made there as well, and he came off that to then come off the DK Metcalf thing. My point essentially is that play is all Geno, right? Start to finish. It's like you didn't trust yourself to make the throw. You then moved in the pocket when you didn't necessarily have to, and you then ran your way into a strip sack, and you cost them the game.
To even get to that point in overtime, at the end of regulation, the Seahawks are down 3. Throw a pass to DK Metcalf, perfect, right along the sideline. Seahawks have no timeouts left, and they're at this point where it's like, if you get tackled in bounds, we got to sprint the field goal team out there. So just in case you get tackled in bounds, be ready. Instead, they get the ball to the sideline. Great. DK decides to keep it in bounds, try to make an extra move.
Trying to run over somebody.
James Pierre, great job. Peanut punches the ball out. Seahawks recover, sprint up, spike it. They have to go review the DK Metcalf play for some reason. Either way, we got to the same place where the Seahawks spiked it. They kicked the field goal to get you to overtime. But just fascinating end of the game management where just in I think on that fourth quarter drive, you had a forced fumble by Minkah Fitzpatrick that Seattle recovered. You have the force by James Pierre that Seattle recovered. A little lucky that Seattle even made it, I think, all the way to this point. So I think the Steelers were better last night, although their offense against a bad Seattle defense, their offense is still like pulling teeth, man. They're just, you know, Najee didn't have a carry over 10 yards, 24 carries for 81 yards. Steelers fans are really excited about how Najee's playing this year. And I realized that.
Why are you so surprised by this?
I do my Pittsburgh radio hit every week, and I love those guys. I love my Pittsburgh friends. And I don't even know why I'm reacting to this. It was just funny. I was like,
I just don't understand why you're surprised.
Because the Pittsburgh guys, they always tweet out whatever negative thing I say that comes across as negative, and they just have their listeners pounce on me. And we said, oh, Najee's like the number 31 ranked running back, which sounds like, oh, there's 32 teams. You must think he's second worst, but there's like 80 guys ranked. I mean, he's in the top third from a grading standpoint going into the game. And I'm like, and he's got worse production than James Conner last year. Do they feel like he's producing better? I think it was just because they were coming off a win and Najee had his first good game last week. I don't know. Anyway, he's doing some good stuff. He had another nice receiving touchdown in the whole thing. But this offense, Deontay Johnson drops a pass when Big Ben finally makes a good throw. Next pass, you got an open receiver. Big Ben is missing it. The offense is just really struggling to put efficient drives together.
That's the first one. That's the first time I can remember Roethlisberger fumbling a pump fake.
I know, that's a good point.
That guy's entire career, he's had the most insane pump fake ever. Like, he is the all-time great pump faker.
Can't stand it.
And yeah, it was so much of a pain in the ass.
Because charting games, it's difficult.
When you're charting games, it was a freaking nightmare. But he's gone like his entire career doing that. And then eventually, right at the death, just as his game is collapsing around him, he just tries to pump fake and drops one on the floor. And they're like, you think that's an incomplete pass? Actually, that's a fumble.
Yeah, so that one was a real fumble. He was trying to stop it. So Big Ben's still not going to end up.
I'm sure he has, but I don't remember him doing that before. Like It's the first time I can remember him doing that, but I'm sure he's done it before in his career, just on the basis that how could you possibly not?
It's almost 40. You can't do things you once could do.
The body just doesn't respond the way the mind wants it to 40. At that age.
Oh, man. What if that's how the ball comes out of my hand when I start pitching? What if I can't even reach the plate?
Oh, that would be disappointing.
At what point in my life can I not even, like, throw a strike? Like, when does that happen? In, like, 5
What goes, like, when you're a pitcher, what goes first, though? Is it, like, you get the noodle arm, or is it, like, you can't, accuracy is gone? Like,
velocity, definitely.
Well, then we're okay. Like, it doesn't feel like it's a large distance to cover.
The funny thing about pitching, or the funny thing about, I think, athletics in general, I knew more about my body by the end. That, your body control and stuff like that was better, but you just lose explosiveness and you just can't.
Well, that's perfect for me. That's all I'm shooting for.
Yeah, so I'll be throwing 50 right over the middle of the plate for you.
I mean, that's ideal.
Anyway, Steelers moved to 3-3. They're salvaging their season too. Seahawks fall to 2-4. It's going to be they got the Saints next week. I believe it's Monday Night Football, so it's going to be rough staying in the playoff picture for Seattle before Russ gets back.
Yeah.
Russ
what did you make of?
Out there for the coin toss.
So he's out pregame, like not just warming up for a game he's not playing in, but like going through a whole like game in his own brain. He's making calls. He's like adjusting at the line of scrimmage. He's like he's adjusting to the right. He's like playing a game mentally in his own head with the sky cam right in front of him, and then at overtime. Wanders out to the middle of the field in a tracksuit to take. You're not active. You're on IR,
which is legal. It's fine. They looked it up.
It should have
honorary captains.
But even if it is,
who cares who's out there for the coin toss?
Even if it is, why?
The coach's wife could go out and do the coin toss. Like, who cares?
Even if it's legal, again, surely there's a level of self-awareness where you're like, what am I even doing here?
There was a baseball player named Curt Schilling, potential Hall of Fame pitcher. And he was described to me years ago. They called him Red Light Curt, which was like, if the red light is on, like the red light is on my camera right now, if the red light is on, he knew where the camera was. Mm-hmm. So Curt was the guy who would be like, oh, I study hitters, and he'd be in between innings, he'd be like writing in his notebook, like, oh, you looking at me? I take notes. I do this. It was kind of like, we call it eyewash, in baseball. Like you're just for show, theater, whatever. Mm-hmm. He knows the red light is on. There's a little element. The Watts seem to do this a little bit. During Hard Knocks, JJ's like, hey, cameraman, I got a 3 a.m. workout. We'll say it's 3 a.m. It's really gonna be 9. But let's make sure you get that right.
Also, so Russ isn't the only quarterback that's done this. Like Drew Brees did a whole kind of similar setup when he was out with his thumb or whatever it was. So it's not just Russ.
I'm just saying.
The coin toss.
All of this
is
added
a little
up.
bit extra.
All of this added up. Honestly, Jameis had elements of this when Jameis was suspended at Florida State. Like he always felt like he was suspended for like a game and he was in his tracksuit or whatever. He always felt like he knew where the camera was. You know what I mean?
It does feel like there's a level. You do all the right things and you want to be that guy, but there feels like you can always go too far in the other direction. Like those people that are just too nice, and everything is like, "Good morning, how's your day going?" You're like, It's 7 a.m. Nobody is that happy. Get the hell out of my day. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's people that are so happy and so nice all the time.
That's because you're just miserable.
Look, that's part of it. But there are people. I've fact checked this with people outside of me. Right?
Oh, okay.
There are people that are just too freaking nice, and they're so obnoxious with it. You're just like, look. Just stop. Nobody is this happy and this nice all the time. This clearly belies some deep-seated personal rot that's taking place within your own brain, and you're trying to make up for it by like being all happy and go lucky on the outside. The way it's like jolly people, they laugh to hide the pain. It feels like that's Russ, right?
You're telling me Santa Claus has some deep-seated hurt?
I would never say that for Santa Claus. But I am saying that like Russell Wilson is being so over the top, like I'm the quarterback, that at some point you're just like, oh, would you just stop? Like, just stop. What are you doing? Like, you're on IR. Get your tracksuited self back to the bench and get away from the coin toss.
I just like that he was out there with Jake Luton, who's 6'7".
Yeah.
I just like that.
Yeah.
Biggest height discrepancy. And
well, particularly if you're going to be in a tracksuit. It's like, when that picture of Derrick Henry next to Mark Ingram?
Yeah.
That just looks ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's like it was made worse by the fact that Mark Ingram is standing there like in street clothes and Derrick Henry is there in the full cleats that like jack him up an extra 2 inches.
It was pretty funny. Anyway, I just think Russ is He's aware of the camera, just as I am. Camera's saying, time to go.
So Pittsburgh end up getting a win, which obviously is huge. It's not like they look great doing it. Like this,
no.
You'd still be concerned. I mean, we got a question on the live show yesterday that's like, is this a must-win game for Pittsburgh if they like to maintain their playoff hopes? You're like, what? They don't have any playoff hopes, do they?
I mean, technically.
Should they?
It's a doable schedule. It's doable.
We're
gonna be down on the Browns because they're 3-3. They have a bye week. The Steelers have a bye. They play the Browns in a couple weeks.
The Pittsburgh Steelers, according to PFF's power rankings, have in fact the most difficult schedule in the NFL from here on in. Now that was before last week, so
I'm seeing the Bears and the Lions, and yeah, they got the Ravens a couple times. The Bengals.
Right, they haven't faced the Ravens yet. They haven't faced the Browns
Okay,
yet.
it's not that doable.
Yeah. They have no shot of making the playoffs.
But they needed to win this one. They beat the Broncos. They beat the Seahawks. Took care of business there. We'll see what happens with the Browns. A couple 3-3 teams. Browns won't be 3-3 by then, but it's
very true.
Anyway, or they could be 3-3-1. That'll do it. That's all the Week 6 action. Of course, Josh Allen plays football tonight. Everybody enjoy that. We've got that promo code, NFLPOD, NFLPOD. You get 25% off. The stats are coming in right now. They're coming into Premium Stats 2.0, all a part of your PFF Elite package. If you're on YouTube, don't be afraid to give us that good old thumbs up. Get this thing going viral. We appreciate everybody for tuning in early on Monday morning, and we're still I'm going to find a field, find a catcher. I'm going to pitch to you within the next few weeks here.
Yeah, me and Tyler are going to go to the batting cage sometime this week and see if I can even swing a bat.
Oh, yeah. Let me know. What night? When
no, you can't come as well.
Oh, I want to be a part of this.
No. This is.
You don't want me to scout?
This is independent work. No, you can't like.
Are we going full Rocky montage on this? Because I got some training to do. I'll get some footage of Kelly and I working out.
You can't do any of the things that Rocky did in Rocky 4. Physically, like you can't.
You don't think I could do the duck walk?
I don't think you can do the duck walk. I don't think you can shoulder press the carriage thing that he did. I don't think you can drag your ass through 3 foot of snow. I don't think you can do any of the things he did.
Give me some snow. I could do that. Give me the snow.
No, you can't.
I'm going to Siberia.
You're like 280 pounds going through a small footprint.
I might be down to 275.
275?
My playing weight was 277. I think I'm right at 277 right now.
Do I need to put on weight for like...
Yeah, more weight equals more power.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I may have actually lost some velocity over these last few weeks with my
So I got to start like pounding burgers for the next week or so?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, why not do that?
I got it.
Appreciate everybody for tuning in.
This thing feels very different to a football helmet, by the way.
Yeah, tough to hear and everything. It's easier to get on. We'll see you guys Wednesday for the midweek show. Don't forget to check out the PFF NFL Daily. Thanks for tuning in.